if you want to be a business as a band, hang on, let me click this quick. You decide that you're going to be serious about it, and it's always a good thing to do. The first thing I think you want to do is set up a legal entity. And so setting up a legal entity kind of does two things for you. It'll limit your liability, and you can get some possible tax breaks depending upon how you set up. So I guess what I could do is quickly kind of go over some of the entities that you will come across or see or hear about as you're setting up or talking to a lawyer helping you set up. So
Sure.
first thing we have is a sole proprietor. Now that is basically you saying to the world, I'm ABC Band. That's all you have to do. And you're a sole proprietor. You get no liability protection. So if you're in a band and something bad happens and you get sued, they can come after you for your house, your car, your personal bank account, any assets you might have and everything. So I do not recommend it, although it's easy to do. It is not technically a legal entity. So not recommended.
Sure.
The next thing that you might run into is what's known as a partnership. So a partnership is two or more people operating a business for a profit. So you have to be careful with this because it can happen by law, we call it, or by accident, if you will. You're a band, you're four people, you're operating a business, you're making some money. Technically, the law might establish you as a partnership. And by that, you're going to be under partnership taxation. So just be careful about that. The other problem with it is a partnership has no limited liability to it. So it's just like being a sole proprietor again. So you're going to be on the hook for everything. So I don't recommend that either. Next, we can move into a corporation. So a corporation is, you'll find what's called a C Corp and an S Corp. C Corp is the big ones, the Fortune 500s, the Apples, the Googles, the Amazons. And they have to file a bunch of paperwork with the state. And they actually have to file like every year with the state. They have to create bylaws. They have to create a board of directors who's going to elect CEOs, CFOs, etc. They will issue stock. So it's kind of complicated. So to me, for a four-piece band kind of just starting out, I don't think I'd really recommend that. You can do an S Corp, which is a little bit different of a thing. I don't have time to get into all that here. Like I said, they teach semesters on this kind of stuff. So I'm just really breezing over like 30,000 feet here with this stuff. Hopefully just to get you to understand some more of it and some of the terminology you might hear. So that's kind of your corporation. You do get limited liability with that. So that's good. Finally, we'll go over the LLC, or the limited liability company. This is one a lot of people are most familiar with. It's a very easy to operate kind of system. You do have to file with the state, but you do get your liability protection. And but you don't have to do all that crazy paperwork. You're operating kind of as a partnership. It's much more easier. You should have a certificate of formation or articles of incorporation drafted by an attorney, depending upon the state you're in. The requirements are different. And of course, you always have to pay a filing fee to the government because the government always wants their money. So it's a good way to go. I think it'll give you that liability protection. Every band, every situation is going to be different. So you can't say one or the other is, the right thing. I can't give a definitive answer with it. But LLC is often works, I think, for bands. So
absolutely. And that's what I was going to bring up and mention, is that seems to be what is mostly the case for the bands, and what I often will try to recommend for doing so. And that's where I guess I'll bring this up briefly as a point, and not to get too long into this topic, I guess, on it, but how do you go about a question being, I find quite often, and it's hard to answer depending on how large the group might be. I'm using this, I guess, in a group setting, but say if there's 4 or 5 members, they have, a few thousand likes and they're still growing. How do you put all of them on the LLC as ownership? Or would you put one person? Again, I mean, maybe this is too far off topic. You tell me on that, but do you put one person on that? And that'll lead us into the next thing too, of having a band agreement, obviously, in a way too, and talking about those things. So
yeah, that's a good question, actually. And it kind of depends. It depends on how you feel. I mean, sometimes there's a singer who kind of, that's the identity of the band. If they go, the band, forget it. You can't replace that singer. And sometimes what they'll do is they want to be the corporation or the LLC or whatever, and they're just going to hire out independent contractors to play bass and guitar. And if, you know, that one guitar player can't make the next tour, whatever, I'll find you a new one. So, but sometimes, you know, there's a band that if somebody leaves, the band just wouldn't be the band anymore. And sometimes everyone wants to be in on it. And so you can have all 4 be members, or just 1 or 2 or 3.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that makes great sense. So that's something as an artist, whether you are independent, I guess, or are a band or a group, an entity, when forming, they're considering, you know, your LLC, if you want to put maybe 1 single person, or if it's, again, that can go into further topic of discussion, but something certainly to keep in mind when forming that, because that can also lead to things. If somebody would want to leave, you know, how did they leave? What's their ownership in it? And again, that can get far more intricate depending overall for it. And that's what, again, can lead us kind of into the next segment here, being band agreements. When is it important to have a band agreement? If you are, again, this is more towards a band, I guess, versus a singular artist, depending.
Sure.
But when to have an agreement, you know, is it something you should do right off the bat as you're starting? Is it when you first release music? When you're first going on tour? I mean, it's a hard conversation to have, you know, it seems like, as well, depending on just who the people are, who the members are, how you can get into who owns what. But something that's very important to have, again, if a song takes off and sells, you know, 5 million copies, and you break up or you fall out, as bands often do with members in some way, they come back and say, this is mine. And if there's no agreement, I mean, it's really tricky, I'm sure, especially in a legal perspective, not only that, but costly. So yeah, if you want to touch on band agreements, then.
Sure. Yeah. So band agreements are very important to have. Oftentimes, if a band comes to me and wants me to create an entity for them, like I said, you have to file that paperwork and should have some of it drafted. I can put a band agreement in that paperwork as well, kind of do a twofer, if you will, get it all done in one shot. But the most important part with the band agreement is do it at the beginning. When you get the core members, you know, let's say you got 4 people who you're like, that's it, we're serious, we're the band, we want to do this as a business, do this full time. That's the best time to do it. It's really, in a sense, like drafting a prenup or a will. Sure. I mean, not something you want to talk about, not something, you know, you want to do, but when the time comes, you're definitely glad that you did it. So, for sure. Let's see. So, anything else about band agreements? I mean, they can be complicated in the sense of they take a lot of time and a lot of thought and effort to put into a draft. I mean, there's a lot of discussion that goes on between the members. It's not something to take lightly. You know, this is your business. This is how your business is going to operate.
Yeah.
And, you know, I call it a compass for the band. It's going to point to, you know, this is how we're going to handle this situation should it arise. I mean, some of those situations could be who's got the rights to the band name if the band breaks up. You know, if the singer takes the band name and the guitarist who broke up takes the band name, and suddenly you have 2 ABC bands playing across the street from each other on the same night at different clubs, you know, that's going to get confusing. I mean, it's the same thing for who owns the songs. I think we all just kind of saw that with the Bad Wolves thing that just went through and finally looks like it's settled.
Great example.
I mean, that's stuff that could be taken care of with it. Profits and losses. How are you going to split everything? How much money is everyone going to put in for band gear and equipment and the van and gas and merch, you know, that you have to buy for tour and everything. And you know, what to do when you need to kick a member out. How many rehearsals do they have to miss? I mean, or what happens if you have to put, God forbid, a member in rehab? You know,
of course. And that's something too, I'm sure Dan can touch a little bit. I mean, without, again, getting crazy off subject of it, but with the band agreement too, being kind of a mediator between members, depending. So it's not one person coming off as one-sided, the how of doing that, you know, how to approach each person, but having to handle that as a managerial duty, especially with larger scale clients and dealing with bands that are grown and things like that. I mean, I'm sure that having the agreement is super, super important for members in case anybody ever does leave. But I mean, I'm sure that's also a challenge that can be posed on a managerial side, but could be handled by having, you know, a good manager, I'm sure, to negotiate that kind of between the group or anybody else involved then.
Yeah, you know, there's no like kind of clean break.
Right.
You can try to remedy the split, but when a core member of the band leaves, then it's going to get dirty. Like William said, having that band agreement in place is good, especially if people are investing into the band and they own equity. Like if somebody put up $5,000 for the van, and you try to kick them out, well, there goes your van. But really, and I kind of hate to say this, but I'm going to keep it real. As a manager, I represent the band and not individual members. Makes sense. If somebody wants to, split or someone's getting the boot, I need to work in the best interest of the band, not the individual. Unless, it's a scenario where it is one person owns the band and everyone else is, essentially an employee. That's a different case. But if you're talking about 4 or 5 people that are equal owners, which is very, very rare, by the way, but yeah, if that's the situation, I need to represent the band and do what's in the best interest of the band as a corporation, not the one person that wants to leave. And the harsh reality of the business, but that is what a manager would ultimately do.
No, that's great. Super, super great point and well said. So I appreciate that too. And I mean, going into, I guess, more towards that next topic too, of like when you form your business, and again, this is touching on the first part of kind of the LLCs and things like that, but when you form a bank account, when is the right time to do that, I guess? And there's not an exact perfect answer to that, I don't think. So that's kind of tied into the other subject, but when is the right time is what, again, I don't know how to answer this specifically. I don't know if any of us can, but like if your band is starting to do well, do you form the LLC? Do you get a trademark on the name? Do you open a business bank account and start putting everything through it, as opposed to being like, that, I guess, call it local or regional up and coming, and you're like just throwing stuff through your normal PayPal account and like paying stuff yourself and all that? I mean, when do you recommend, if there's any way to recommend, when might be a good point to start trying to do that? Or should it be like immediately, even from $1, depending on the formation?
I say day one. That's I don't mean definitely to jump in on.
That's great.
If I just wanted to add one point on the LLC. For all those listening on forming an LLC, you would do that through your Secretary of State for the state that you live in. And then just also to add to on the LLC, this is very important. If you do file an LLC and you do have an LLC formed, and let's just say your band makes 0 profit, don't think that you cannot just, Uncle Sam's not gonna. If you have an LLC formed, you have to file that. So I just want to put that out there. Those are just 2 important things I just wanted to say for any musicians listening. But going back to what you were saying, Chris, I think, in my opinion, as a manager, day one, that's I take my career serious. If an artist wants to take this serious, have it be day one. Band agreements, get the awkward conversations out, get the songwriter split conversations, get the band agreement, get everything out in the very beginning, because it's easier to get it out of the way than when there's $50,000 sync deal on the table.
Yeah, that's super true.
And going back to what I think what William was saying is if some, or even what Dan was saying, if someone leaves and they have splits or ownership of masters, and then there's a deal that comes along, it's like, how does that get? So it's, in my opinion, again, I don't mean to jump ahead in line here, but in my opinion, I would just say day one, have these awkward conversations out of the way, and then then go on about making.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you don't have to be like a big business either. You don't have to wait until your band hits some kind of plateau. I mean, even if you are just like a local bar band playing, heck, it's good to be protected anyway. I mean, you get into an accident on the way to the gig, or your amp falls off the stage and hits somebody in the front row or something like that. I mean, you're protected that way too. So don't think like, our first nationwide tour is when we'll start doing this.
No, that's a great point.
I'm gonna jump in. I'm gonna be the contrarian here and say I disagree with that. I'm gonna tell you guys why. I think when you're starting to write up contracts and get into like the bigger picture of the business aspect, you're forgetting you're day one of the band. Like you just showed up like in your mom's garage. You haven't even plugged in to play your first Metallica cover, and you're already talking about band agreements and this and that. I just don't see it that way. What I've seen, especially with kind of these smaller local regional bands that are just starting to build up their career, or hopefully have a career in the future, is that they spend a lot of time on kind of needless busy work, really to feel like they're doing something, you know, like create a business, but you haven't played a show yet. Like you don't need a bank account because you're not making any money. You know, just like bands that will come to me and manage my band, but you don't need a manager. You don't have a song.
What's there to manage? Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have any money coming in. You don't need a bank account. I mean, eventually you do want to get this stuff out of the way. And yeah, you know, like Mishko said, get those awkward conversations out of the way. But I wouldn't say day one. It's when you're starting to regularly play shows and you're actually getting paid. Because I mean, look, I'm in Los Angeles. Every band has to pay to play. If you want to play on Sunset, you know, you're selling pre-sale or you're coughing up dough. And I'm sure it's like that around most major cities in the country. So like you're like no promoter is cutting you a check, you know, on your first day. And so, you know, my advice to the listeners, and, you know, I could be totally wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. Don't get caught up in like the boring business aspect. You're going to have a long time to go over contracts and how to split money. And, you know, if you're going to sit there arguing over, you know, your sync split, you're not going to, what's the likelihood that you're actually going to get that sync split? You haven't played your song yet. You're not doing a thing yet. Be a band first, be businessmen when it's time to be businessmen or business people.
Yeah. So finding that good medium, if that's the proper word there. But yeah, I definitely see what you're saying though, because that can spook people away even too from, like you're saying, if you're trying to jam in the garage and these guys are already like, well, you better sign this, you know, stuff. And no, I totally can see both sides of that too, making sense to have to be that level flow to win, you know, not to waste that time. And I guess that'll take us briefly here into our next point of conversation too. 1 second. There we are, is hiring managers or accountants or lawyers or agents and people like this. I mean, again, this is something that we could talk for a long time on, I'm sure, but like when might be the right time to do that? And I think a lot of times, you know, artists think they might need these things right off the bat, and that'll be like their ticket, the golden ticket. Like, oh, if I just had this manager, I could get this. If I just had this agent, I could get this. And easier said than done a lot of times, but obviously it's like, when do you actually need that? When is it valuable on both sides to have the band bring somebody on, but also for the person's time and effort of the hundreds of man hours and, you know, things that go into building the brand behind the scenes. So I get asked a lot of times too about things like, oh, could you manage us? And it's like, there has to be something to manage. If not, it's more of, you know, we're spending time developing the brand that you're trying to build, the vision that you have, and trying to trim the fat, I guess. But when would you think is the right time to try to bring in, again, a manager, accountant, attorneys, things like this?
Well, it depends on where the band is, you know? If there's so much business happening, let's say you're a band, you just broke through from the local level, you're a regional act now, you're playing around Southern California, you're actually starting to get paid a little bit, even if it's only $150, things are starting to come in, and you take a look at, you know, I suppose when you look at a band as a business, it's like kind of like an asset portfolio. You've got your live show business, you've got your merchandising, you know, your publishing, whatever. When you start to need to exploit those assets, that's maybe when you start looking at a manager. Me personally, if I'm starting out like with a starter band, I kind of look for a publicist. I look for somebody that can help not necessarily get more exposure, but create more assets for the band. And a lot of times that comes in the way of media attention, playlisting, but each band is different. There's no one right answer, but you don't need an agent if you're just playing these local shows. You can do it yourself. Ideally, you would want those people to come to you, which I guess we will probably touch on something like that later, but it depends on what when you're hiring somebody, it's what the band has in front of them. If you're playing a lot of shows, then yeah, maybe you need somebody to negotiate for you. But if you're just trying to put out your first EP, maybe it would be in your best interest to, you know, try to get some blogs attention, or, you know, get photographers at your show, whatever. But no, it's not always, you know, go to the manager, go to the booking agent, find this, that, and the other, or even go to a label. Sometimes it's, you know, find the cool local photographer that gets published in, you know, the cool websites.
That's great. No, that's great to know too. And I mean, I think again, that goes back to the earlier part too, saying, I mean, it's not saying you don't need these people by any means. Obviously you do, especially as things continue to always progress, but don't be afraid to kind of dive in on your own, get your feet wet, you know, try to learn little elements about each thing too. So you understand the whys and the whats, or somewhat the whys and whats and the reasoning behind of what's going on with that stuff, instead of just, again, having some vague thought in your mind, like, oh, if I have this, this is going to open up. If I have this, this is my golden ticket. And not everybody thinks like that, obviously, but I've run across a lot. And as everybody does, I'm sure that you're like, I wish it was that easy. If you just had this agent and that was the key to success, or if you just had this publicist, or, you know, whatever, that just opened all the magic doors and you would be famous or successful. But yeah, so it's a case by case with
as a musician,
the right time that
you
works.
Say, Chris, you and I think you and I talked about this last week. If a band says, if I just had this, then we'll have it's never, no one can just wave a magic wand to get things done.
Right.
To add, you mentioned a lawyer. And I think I'm going to add to what Dan was saying. You know, when the band is getting traction and everything, let's say, I want to give advice on this. Let's say the time comes when you need legal advice. A lot of times bands will ask around, try to be cheap. William can attest to this. If you need a lawyer for music business, hire a music business lawyer. Yeah. Not use your mom's, aunts, neighbors, cousins, roommates, best friend. Hey, can you just look at this piece of paper? No, your career is worth it.
Yep.
Hire the damn lawyer. Spend the money. You hire the lawyer, hire the music business lawyer, ask around. Sorry, I don't mean to vent, but
thank you. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had people come to me and like, hey, can you help me get out of this contract? Okay, did you have someone look over it on the way in? Well, yeah, my uncle, but he's, you know, he's a personal liability
I had a band
lawyer.
say their uncle, he was a probate lawyer. I'm like,
and they'll tell them like, we don't understand this, we don't know, and I'm like, okay, that's why you're in the situation you're in.
Yeah, understandable. No, that's a great point. And to wrap that section up, I mean, I think that's a great point though. Use someone who is for, or a professional, I guess, in what it is that they're supposed to do, you know, in their field of or their craft there. So
I will say real quick, same for accountants. When you get to the level of accountants, your average local CPA knows nothing about royalty accounting. I'll just let you know that. You have to find one who understands entertainment accounting.
Yeah, and again, that'll come along, you know, with time and as things go on, or if you have a label or whatever it might be. But yeah, that's another great point too to consider is an entertainment accountant. Then obviously to look over things like what's owed to you from labels and things like that. That's awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, that was great for that segment there. Does anybody, before we'll move on to this next part, have any last minute things they want to add to that conversation or that topic part there? All right. Awesome. Again, I appreciate everybody being here and tuning in. And again, we'll have a Q&A at the end to kind of answer anybody who is tuned in's questions with whoever is still available to be here. So we'll move into the next section here, which is going to be music marketing. And I think that's a super important topic that artists, you know, can pay attention to. We can always learn and adjust. It's always ever changing. And we have, let me admit them, sorry about that, but we have Jamie Roberts here, who's a publicist of a long time, and I'll let her tell a bit about herself. I, you know, don't want to mess anything up with that, but I mean, she's
anything more, you mean?
Anymore, I know, I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, I'll let you go ahead and do an intro a bit about yourself, and then we can hop into the first point here, or of conversation, of course.
Sure. Just like everybody's been saying here, you hire an entertainment lawyer, you hire an entertainment accountant. Also, not everybody that says they're a publicist is a publicist. So there are a lot of people who will charge you $200 and they'll tell you they'll get you on television, and that is absolutely not true.
Sure.
I have, what? Oh, sorry, I was just wondering what you said, Chris. So I have been doing publicity for 25 years. I was head of publicity at Roadrunner Records, at 11/7 Music and Better Noise Music and Universal Records. And I've been doing this a really long time, and I see a lot of people who call themselves publicists. So definitely make sure you know that the person you're working with has worked with someone who has a band like yours.
Yes.
Because there are different specialties. My company name is For the Win Media. And it used to be Right Angle PR, but it's not anymore. Now, if you go there, you're going to get people who are not professionals. When to hire a publicist is a really big question. Now, everybody, including some managers, you know, who are newer managers, are going to go, oh yeah, she'll get you everywhere, because yeah, I know the bigger media outlets, but are you ready? Is there anyone there that's going to read pieces that are going to come out on you? It's kind of a chicken or an egg thing. It's like these publications, they have a need. They need to get eyeballs on their website so they can sell advertising for more money. And that's their motivation behind who they're putting on their site. Long ago, they would do it just because they liked a band. Now they're going to do it if I tell them I'll give them, you know, Stephen Perkins because they want my new band. And, you know, I can't even guarantee them that, because it's whether Stephen wants to do it or not. And I say that because Stephen told me to talk to Tim today. Awesome. And, you know, what your goals are is really important. You have to do it incrementally, because really it's what your definition of success is. There are different definitions of success. You can be a working musician and consider yourself a success. You can make a living doing music, or you can be famous, you know, and being famous, not all it's cracked up to be, trust me. So we have to find out what your goals are first when you go to a publicist, and you have to make sure they can achieve them, or they have achieved them for someone else before.
Yes.
You're building a foundation with your PR. You're basically building the house, and this foundation is going to be who knows you, how they know you, and these are people that are going to talk about you. Your best evangelists are your early fans. So, you know, you're trying to speak to them, you're trying to get them to know who you are. To that end, you have to work with a publicist. You can't drop off a record at my door and say, see you when I'm famous. You know,
go get me all the biggest publications. Yeah.
Right. And, you know, it's really, you work together, because essentially I get asked about 1 million times a day, why should I care about this artist?
Right.
And really the person that can tell you that with the most confidence is the artist themselves. So I need to learn from the artist what makes them special. Why are they different than everyone? You know, why do they do what they do? And what are their other interests? Because it's a very crowded field to go to Spin magazine and have people look at you among other musicians. Yeah. But if you know a lot about wine and you go to Wine Enthusiast, you're the only musician in there.
Sure.
So that's essentially why I specialize, for the most part, in lifestyle press, because I want to put you where no one else is.
That's smart. I really like that.
Well, and you know, I think on different levels, you can do it in different ways. For instance, I have an artist now who's in recovery. We're doing Recovery Today magazine, because people that will understand his experience will hear how well-spoken he is and how his journey was. They'll relate to him, and then they'll listen to his music. And that's really what I attempt to do in a campaign. Also, if you're excited to talk about something, that's super important. Like, you know, say you love wine or you love cigars or whatever, like you get asked about your band all day long. You don't get asked about your interests all day long.
That's
so that
true.
winds up being the most exciting thing for a lot of my clients. Also, it's super important, and this goes along with like social media stuff, imagery. I had a band come to me to consult with me once, and I said, I looked at your picture and I assumed you were a jam band. Because you had like a big scarf and, you know, you were standing on the railroad tracks and very cliche picture, you know, the one everyone has. But they sounded like My Chemical Romance.
Oh, wow.
Would never have known. So your imagery has to be consistent with your music.
Absolutely.
You have to look at that band and go, that band is a metal band, or that band is a jam band. Like, you can't go, oh, well, I'm a complex person. Well, yeah, but most of the people that are going to be your fans are not, you know?
No, of course. And I think you can't, I mean, I don't know. I think it depends on what it is too, but it's smart to keep that in mind without also over trying, I guess, until that timing comes and it all fits. And that's something too, it's an easier said than done thing with artists, bands, musicians, but something I always try to be mindful with them of is like, you know, it needs to appear, I guess, like you're a rocker, you're different. I mean, not always, but without seeming like, oh, I have to do this, I'm uncomfortable, I'm trying really hard at the same time, because people can read that.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. In essence, it's lean into who you really are and make it look that way, because when this band changed their photos, they did so much better. They doubled their fan base.
No, that's
because
excellent.
People
that's
knew
excellent.
what they were getting when they were looking at the band, you know? So there's a few different ways that you can market your band. In the beginning, when I was working with Slipknot, everybody was laughing and telling me it was a gimmick.
Right.
And they were like, oh, are they clowns? Like insane clown posse? And I was like, really? All you need to do is put on the record and you'll know that's not the case.
Of course.
I mean, for the most part, my job is getting people to press play because they don't want to.
Yeah, there's just so much stuff constantly, especially now flooding people's ears to stand out. And I feel like that's another thing for bands to, or I always reference bands, I'm used to working with them, I apologize, but artists in general, musicians, a lot of times I see kind of the repetitive process, especially with up and coming ones that kind of have their own mindset set, but it's just as, I hate to use the word, it's so simple, but it's like, okay, let's pre-save now. Let's, you know, drop this now. Here's our new song. Here's a new video. And that's okay. But at the same time, it's like, if you don't have that diehard fan base already, that's just so cut and dry. It's not telling any story. It's not giving anything. It's just like, why would anybody care? So I like that you mentioned again, more the lifestyle things, because it tells more of a story, gets to know the people. And it's not just like new song out today, get it now, when there's 20,000 of those every day.
Well, to your point, you know, it's kind of like every musician, well, most musicians that I've ever worked with have like ants in their pants about getting their music out right now. And I always ask them, why? Now, that's a really important question, because if you're just itching to get it out because you've had it like, you know, on your hard drive a long time, that's not a good enough reason. You have to give it setup time. And, you know, I mean, I get it. I know you want to get this out to the world, but we need lead time to get publications to write about you when it comes out. We need to amass a fan base. If you have 0 people, it's the tree falling in the forest. And does anyone hear it?
Yeah, you know? Absolutely.
So you have to be honest about what you want, and you have to be realistic about what you expect. You know, I never guarantee anyone anything, because I don't know how people are going to wake up in the morning. I have to go on the whim of the people I talk to.
Yeah. And I'll even touch on, I mean, not that I'm a full-time publicist or anything by any means, but I mean, I do notice just through talking with people like yourself, in the business, especially the media business, people change kind of quite often as well too. So who you might have that relationship with, you know, and be established and might be able to take things to, I mean, 1 week, 2 weeks later, it might be a whole new person. And the publicist is really having to work behind the scenes to reestablish relationships, push for that artist again and keep working those things. So that's a never ending challenge, especially for publicists too, is to continue building relationships and trying to keep them with these large scale publications where, I mean, it's kind of like what do they call it? Like a chopping block in ways, unfortunately for a lot of people.
Well, building relationships is really an old school notion, Chris. Like we're I mean, because people now, all these people that call themselves publicists, all they do is email people. They don't call them. They don't talk to them. And I when I was hiring an assistant for myself, I was like, if you haven't jumped on the phone in the past month with someone, I don't want you working for me.
Sure.
So, Chris. And, I want to be sure that, I am making these relationships, and I did come up with a lot of these media people. So I know them well. And now they're all editors, which is great for me.
Right.
And for my clients, because we all used to actually talk, we all used to go out.
Yeah.
So, but
that's something that can be applied across the board everywhere too. Like as a band starting out, you should be talking to the promoters, not just to get shows, but you want to check in on them monthly. Just say, hey, how are you doing? Have a conversation. Management, agents, you don't want to just jump in right away to business.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I pick 5 people a month that I don't need anything from, and I call them, and I just call them to chit chat because I'm going to be asking them for something soon. So I should really maintain that relationship. What?
Oh, and you can certainly apply that too as the artist. I think Nick, you were going to pop in, but as the artist too. I mean, if you have a radio station that plays you, it doesn't mean you're always going for something from them, but just saying hello, or a bigger media site that, champions you, or an interviewer, figuring out things, just ways to communicate with them. That's not just, hey, we got a new song, just being human and having those relationships is a really big thing. And bringing up, I guess, now with social media, and publications and how things are changing, since print obviously is kind of changed and become more digital and more online, where people used to
print.
I mean, where
really
people
difficult.
used to discover that, and now it's ever changing. I mean, one second it's TikTok, or it was Twitter, it's Facebook and things like that. But I mean, I think again, reminding artists of all kinds that it is a little bit of a level playing ground. If you do have a reasonable story and, a great song or something unique about you, I mean, more than ever, you do have a chance to find a way to connect with an audience. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have even a large budget or, a huge skill set or label or anything to get you started.
But also, you have to realize that this is a give and take. This is an exchange. And what's really important with this exchange is when someone covers you, you post it on your socials. They want you to do that. That's why they had you on, because they want your fans to read their publication.
Yes.
So that give and take is really, really important. Also they'll look at your page, and if you have a few less fans than the bands they usually cover, if you have really good engagement, that'll make up for it. If you're really talking to your fans, if you're really communing with them, if they really know you, if you really ask their opinions on things and they give them to you, that is really important and really powerful. I'll take a band with 1,000 really dedicated followers that get back to them and talk to them over a band with 10,000 that probably 8,000 are bought.
Sure. That makes total sense. And not being afraid to try new things too, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but not being afraid to try new things or new places. I mean, one that comes to mind for myself is the TikTok thing. I've seen that change so many people's lives, even in artists' lives and things. I'm still a little behind the curve. I understand
TikTok
it,
all the way.
Yeah. I mean, and that's something right there that you can be have 0 fans or a couple fans, and the next day have, a ridiculous amount, but staying up to date with social media as much as possible. I mean, and that's where it gets a little tricky too. And that's why having someone like a publicist is super crucial though, because you only have so much time in a day to be an artist or a musician as well. You don't always have the time to sit there and follow and talk to people and tell your story. So it's a nice mixture of finding somebody who can tell your story and understand your brand, and obviously work with you to help oversee that is huge.
Yeah, and creating a culture around your band, which is really important, because essentially, and guys, correct me if you think I'm wrong, but you're not really making a ton of money from your music from the get-go. You're making more money from your community that will buy your merch and will do your GoFundMe and all of that. So, you know, dealing with them, there's what is it, that 1,000 fans philosophy, Chris?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. If they're really engaged and you really have a community, you're going to be able to move forward with those fans. So, I mean, as far as publicity goes, if anyone promises you anything, run the other way, because they can't. Sure. Everything they do depends on how the editor of X, Y, and Z wakes up in the morning.
Very
true. You know, promises, just bye-bye, you know. And also be willing to do social takeovers of some people, like some magazines, social media. It doesn't matter if they have 10 followers and you have 2,000. Those are 10 people that are going to come over to you. You know, just put the work in, even if it's not the biggest thing in the world, because people remember and people get better jobs.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Anybody else have anything else they want to add in here, I guess, about, you know, publicity and marketing?
If you hire a publicist and you're paying them money and they're on your team, nothing pisses them off more than having them find out about news about your band through social media. So if something happens, if you hire this person, there's all the musicians in here, and this may sound so simple, but can I tell you how many times I've seen a band, they hired their publicist and they forgot to tell their publicist of big news, of a big show. Tell your publicist first, then post about it, or work with your publicist. The other thing I wanted to add to what Jamie was saying is, I've had publicists, if they say, oh, I can get you on so-and-so or Alt Press or Loudwire, I'm Facebook friends with it. If they say that as like, that's their connection, run. Like, it's...
Something I wanted to add from something Jamie brought up at the beginning of making sure that a publicist has a client that sounds like you or is in your vein. That's a pretty big one. And just like for bands starting out, what you should be doing is looking at all of your favorite releases from that year and who did their publicist, who is their publicist, who did it, and then reaching out to them.
Great point. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and on the same token, like I worked with the Dillinger Escape Plan and I got them their first television appearance on Conan, but I did it with their ironic pop song. And then everyone came to me, why can't you get me on Conan? And I said, give me the right song and I can get you on Conan.
Yeah. No, that's understandable with them too, of course. It really is. And that's what everybody will say over and over again about anything, I guess, when it kind of comes to the business. So it's like, what one thing works for somebody doesn't work for another. It's literally so customized and case by case. You have a general guide, as anybody does with things, but you know, it's so different for everybody with that. So,
and be honest about what you want and have weekly meetings, weekly calls with your publicist. I mean, you know, if I don't know what's going on, I can't do the best work possible. Just like Nicholas said, like I want to strangle a band if they put up something before they give it to me, because that's a wasted opportunity for news.
Absolutely. Then it just defeats the purpose, and it's old news then for a lot of the digital or publications, of course. Then, you know, oh, it's already out, we don't care, you know, we have 20 other things. So,
and on the band side, make sure you upload your stuff before the deadlines. I've seen a lot of bands not do that, and that also pisses off the publicist.
Yeah, that can be absolutely quite tricky. So awesome. I mean, I think we'll keep on flowing here. Jamie, do you have anything else that you want to add right now, or?
Not really. I mean, you know, I can take questions in the later period because
sure,
you know, the essence of it is really what you just heard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, it's such case by case with everything. So, I mean, thank you obviously for that too. And I mean, I think we'll keep everything flowing if everybody's good here. I mean, we're making pretty good time, and appreciate, again, everybody that's in here sticking with us and stuff. So I hope you're all having a great evening, or it's evening here where I'm at. I'm not sure for everybody else necessarily, but so what we have coming up next here is where we'll be focusing for a little while is the releasing music topic, and that's as a whole here. And we'll be having Nick Mishko and Tim Buchenroth here from FM Music Management kind of chiming in and focusing with us on that. But getting us started, and I think one of the most important things for an artist too is being organized, at least with what your assets are, whether you're delivering them to a publicist, to a record company, to somebody to mix it or master it or review it, whatever it is. You want to have that organized so you don't, and I've seen this happen. It's happened even with our label multiple times. A band would send us, this is the final, and send us a folder. 2 days later, another mix. A day after that, another mix, to where we've had 10 different emails come through. So at some point, one of those mixes is the wrong mix that gets uploaded. The song comes out, and it's just a little nuance that's off or something. But again, making sure that's organized and final is a super huge thing. So I'll let these guys pop in here and talk about, organizing your assets and go from there.
Not all speak at once. How's everyone doing? So I Tim, if you don't mind, I guess I'll start it off and we'll go from there and bounce off of each other. So organizing everything. I mean, just like what Chris said, you don't want to, I even think Jamie touched on this earlier, is like bands are so, like, I don't know what it is with bands. Like they want their lead time. Like, I want it out now. Like, okay. Like you can't do that. Like, I mean, Spotify is like, in a perfect world, you should give Spotify 5 weeks. That's what my contacts over there tell me. I can't tell you how many times bands are like, let's put this out in 2 weeks. You got to give lead time, organizing everything, making sure, I mean, and this is all going to sound so simple, but like making sure it's the right master, making sure, you have updated imagery, making sure all your bio, just the littlest things, it all plays a part in a bigger picture. Now going back to what releasing music, I'm a big proponent of singles. I am all about singles anymore. I honestly, my bands are going to kill me for saying this, I don't really care much more about EPs or albums. I'm all about singles and using the waterfall effect. We can go into the waterfall effect here in a little bit. But as far as like, a good lead time, 5 to 6 weeks out, get it as, upload it to your distributor, get the get it, make sure it's gone through. And then once you submit it to your distributor, this is one thing a lot of bands don't do, is they don't double check. I had a band, they came to me once and they were like, we uploaded everything. And then they just never double checked with the distributor that it went through. Like, actually double check that your shit gets uploaded. So,
yeah. Absolutely crucial.
5 to 6 weeks. Once it goes through, then you submit to, your Spotify playlist. And then and if you work with a distributor, like I have a few clients, we directly deal with 1RPM distribution, and, we can go into how you pick your distributor. But, I have specific reps over at 1RPM. So with my clients, we upload everything. They give us the lead time that we've discussed ahead of time. And then their rep will tell us, okay, we're taking this to our Spotify. So our rep will take it to the Spotify rep on top of our own pitch. So, but it all comes down to, I think with releasing music, is two things: is you want consistency and you want enough lead time. Absolutely. As simple as those two things are, you would be surprised. I have a band on my roster. They went from 30,000 monthly to they're about to hit 100,000 monthly on just doing consistent every 6 week singles. And you don't have to do that. But now going to 2022,
it seems to keep people interested as well, because we're living in a world which we all face it now, but it's what, 0.2 seconds, and there's always something coming out. So, I think that's great. And it also is nice because, bands are always ever changing. And that's something, when I was in a band too, I always kind of hated that factor of like, it was so permanent long-term. Like you would spend, however long it was. It could even be a matter of weeks or days, but you'd spend 2 months, I'll call it. You would write your songs, you would go record it for another month or so, and then put it out. But you were stuck for the next 1.5 year cycle playing those same songs, stuck in that old, just boring, repetitive process that I think not necessarily bad if you're large enough where you can cover a large enough ground and not repeat yourself over and over. But for up and coming acts, definitely you know, you need something fresh, and it got so boring to do that. So yeah, I mean, singles, it's the way to
The
go,
one
in my
thing you can
opinion.
control in this crazy music business of high highs and low lows, the one thing you can control is how much music you put out there. And a lot of independent artists are just killing it, which is every 4 to 5 weeks, new single, new music video. Now, going back to what I said about not being a fan of EPs and albums, let's not get that twisted. I have clients that do a fair share on, vinyl and, physical, which still, does play a pretty good part, but, that's for, I guess, a different discussion. Yeah. But as far as like getting everything going, it's a consistency in lead time. If you, not only that, it's like, if you want this to, like, if you want somebody else to believe in your music, why wouldn't you want to do everything you can to put yourself forward, to give yourself the best chance of success? Why would you just want to drop something tomorrow?
Yeah, absolutely. Nicholas, one thing is as well is to line up all the assets. So have the story when you release the song. So don't release the song and then, do a show, do some shows, get the assets to do the photo shoot, get the assets together that say, here's on Spotify, here is on iTunes, all these types of things, and have that all lined up beforehand. So you can tell the story with each release as well. So it doesn't look super scattered. Like, we did a show, let's post it. We did this, let's post it. And the band started getting real stressed out because they can't come up with content quick enough.
Yeah.
If you do that content way in advance, nobody knows. You don't have to post it right then.
That's true.
So you kind of set it out and go with the flow. So you don't run out of that content or telling a story, and you're building another story while one's already being told.
And with doing, like, we all keep going back to a story. I think for all the musicians here, a lot of times musicians, I don't know what my story is. I don't know. A lot of times you can create your own story by documenting and paying attention to what you do on a daily. Like Jamie said, if you, what are your lifestyle stuff? That will help you. It's a lot of times it's not as hard as bands make it out to be.
It's not, with the lifestyle, Nicholas, there's a band that I manage. I just went uptown to the local brewery and asked them if they'd label the beer. And now we have a beer coming out. We're doing a tap party.
We've done that. It's always great responses.
Beer commercial. Yeah, it's getting distributed to 120 different pubs, and they're passing out the QR sticker to the Spotify.
Wow, that's really neat.
All the service of beer. And it's just a hometown guy that really likes the band. So if you can use those resources and, build the lifestyle brand around it as well. And I found as well, before we release a song and with a new band, what I like to do is I like to put the merchandise out there first, get the friends wearing it, put the stickers out there. People know the brand. I did it with a band that I manage, which was really interesting. Somebody put a sticker at the local Starbucks, and it's just the brand. And then my wife was wearing the hoodie, and an older gentleman said, I've seen that brand around. And the song had never released, or a band had never released a song, right?
Wow.
So you kind of create that mystique. Maybe people are talking about it. So something's a little familiar with the band, and maybe they'll listen to the band as well. It's a small scale, but it's a local start. And if you can expand it and create the story and always try to make news, right? I mean, if you don't have anything for the publicist to talk about, she's not anything to talk about. And if it's not something the publicist wants, then make some noise in your hometown. Make the local papers. Make the papers at the next city over. Just just do cool shit all the time.
It makes total sense. It definitely does. And I mean, when you go to release your music, and this is that next topic here, I guess that falls down the list, but when do you choose the right distributor for your music, or how do you go about doing that? And I mean, again, I think that might be a choice preference thing and just trial and error. And I'll let you all chime in obviously more on this too, but there's a handful of the top companies out there, but finding the one that actually works right for your music, your style, your brand, who you're trying to be around, and obviously what control you have of your music, depending on who that distributor is. So if you guys want to touch on that a little bit too, and picking that and the process.
I know there's a list of distributors that like kind of goes down the line, like what they do and what they don't do and what percentages they take and how many people they go to. I found that online when I Googled it, and it's great to have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, that's something too. I think that it's such a case by case with that, depending on maybe your manager, if you have one, or who you're working with too, or if you have a label already. So many what ifs on that, but definitely finding the one that seems to work for you, that, you know, pays out and can help you generate your pre-save links if you need them, and see your analytics and give the support that's needed. I mean, I think that's a really important part as well, because some distributors don't help pitch, for example, to Spotify.
That's
I don't know.
a big thing,
Yeah. I
Chris.
don't know what ones and can't speak on that, but I mean, I know some will, some won't, some have stronger partnerships in certain places. So doing research into that, again, to what one will work for you, I think is crucial.
When I look for a distributor, that's the first thing I like. What are their, I get straight to it. What is your relationship with Spotify? That's what is your relationship? And then I go from there. Okay. So, and then what is your relationship to Sirius that you can add to my relationship to Sirius? And because, and then from there, you know, it could, depending on what the path, you know, there are some great independent, you know, you've got your TuneCore, your DistroKid, CD Baby, they're all independent, but having distribution, they are that extra layer getting to your Spotify's, getting on those playlists. And then not only that, it's nice to be able to call up my rep that's distributed to one of my artists. Hey, metadata is wrong, or there's an error. They can fix it like that. Whereas, like, not going to name names, there's certain independent distributions, they could take 6 to 7 business days to get back to you. And, you know, you got a brand new release. That's very important. So, and then, you know, not to go down this rabbit hole, but like, there are additional perks with certain distribution. You know, some will do advances, some will pay you to have your entire back catalog transferred over. Again, that's one of those, if you're at that position to I mean, they're not going to throw you $50,000 if you're a brand new baby. You know, it's again, but those are just to give you an idea of like what some things are that are, and again, and not only that, here's some things that some bands don't think about is that some distributors are like Empire Music is real big in the hip hop world, not really good for rock and metal. Whereas like, but I guess when it comes down to everything in music, a lot of bands forget this. Don't be afraid to ask questions and ask around, or like, if you know a band that has a distributor, or even a publicist or a lawyer, what was your experience working with that person?
Yeah.
Do your due diligence. A lot of bands forget to do that just about anything nowadays.
No, very true. Very true. And I think that that's a great point with the distributors too, is finding that one, asking around, seeing what's worked for others, asking friends, doing your own research until that point comes where maybe you will sign a further deal or partnership, or maybe with a label or publisher, something like that. Along the line. So hitting into that next topic here. Where did we go? Sorry, I lost my place. There we are. The marketing timeline and the agenda, you know, behind what's coming out, if you guys want to touch on that. And I know you kind of have a little bit in the conversation already between the two of you somewhat, but, you know, having that timeline to reference of what's coming out. Is it a single? When do things need to be delivered? When are you hiring your publicist or having their stuff go out to media? When do you start posting to fans and pre-sales and pre-saves and all that stuff? So if you guys want to touch on that a little bit for what you think it makes sense.
Here. Yeah, you know, it's with the pre-saves, you know, if you're a brand new band and it's your first single coming out, I wouldn't put the pre-save up for 30 days. You're going to have the same amount of people all month that you did at the very last week. I would try to create a story, get people kind of interested in maybe what you're doing, hold some type of mystique, and then drop it. Maybe pre-save for a day, send everybody there and drop it. And then as you get more fans and you start to build up, you know, maybe the next one, you know, I got a band that's, you know, they're pretty large. We did a 30-day pre-sale, and it didn't seem to me, it didn't seem like they were reaching any more people with the 30-day pre-sale. It looked like people got bored with it by the time it came out to me. So we kind of started doing a little bit different. And the bigger the band, the longer the pre-sale.
That's a good way of wording it. That's true, because you can afford, like, you're super, like, if you're the Rolling Stones, you could put a pre-sale for 6 months, and whereas like you're brand new band starting out. But again, I guess going back to, you do have to have a little bit of a timeline. I think what we're both, agreeing on, right, as far as that goes. Timelines is releasing. I kind of like to do mine with like partnering up with like what Jamie said, partnering up with sites and influencers, and then having like kind of this waterfall effect of this many people drop it this couple of days, and then this many people, and then like towards the end, try to circle back and have them all post a pre-sale at once. But like what Chris has been saying, there's no magic formula. You kind of have to, you have to edit your plan every single, and okay, it didn't work for this time, or it didn't work, so it's there's a lot of critiquing this business of how you release music.
And then go ahead.
And also having a distributor that does marketing as well. You go through DistroKid or something like that, and they they distribute it all the way out, and then once it's out there and it's already out to the DSPs, and it's check out my link, and then everybody's posting, check out my link, and you're trying to figure out how to advertise. And it's nice to have somebody that really knows how to advertise to iTunes or wherever it needs to go, or Spotify, or especially YouTube, somebody that really knows how to do that and not try to handle it yourself. So, somebody like you mentioned, like $1 PM, and that distribution that has label services is, I think, really handy.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with the progressing times and things like that, it's certainly helpful to have some sort of a rep or somebody helpful there to talk to and help guide the process or change metadata and do those type of things, which will bring up this next part here then, which is actually, go ahead, Jimmy.
I just wanted to add one thing. It's also really important that even if you do have someone doing that you consult with them and see who they're targeting advertising wise, and make sure it's in line with how you see your band, because having someone to do something doesn't mean you're absolved of responsibility for it.
That's true too. And especially if they just take it and you don't have those conversations, that's a great point. I mean, they can go spend $500, $1,000 of your marketing dollars that'll be coming back or owed somewhere or paid. And you're not knowing that it's the right market or hitting the right niche or anything like that. So that's great.
I just went through, Chris, I just went through that with one of our acts. The label was saying we got them on these playlists. I look at the playlist, and they're a metal band, and they're on like a classic rock playlist. Yeah. It's like they're trying to stack it to try to get a play or something. I mean, they didn't target, that's for sure.
Yeah. And it can throw a lot of things off with that. And so, I mean, once you have your release out, say it's release day and on the following weeks or month or however, I think that's something too that a lot of musicians kind of like gas out on, so to speak, because they spend so much time filling up the tank and using everything, like hyping it up and getting it ready and getting the assets out there and doing all that when it comes out. And I find, here's something that I'll touch a quick part on that too, is I don't like when artists give away the song before the song is out. There's nothing that drives me any more crazy than like, I'll use an example, but like a band's like, hey, we have a new song coming out this Friday or a new music video. And then on Tuesday, they post the whole chorus and a whole clip of that music video that's supposed to drop in premiere. I get the factor, as wanting to get it out and hype people up and make them excited because it looks so cool and it's awesome. But you just literally, in my opinion, again, you just blow the whole load of excitement of any anticipation of that song, of anything, because the visual surprise element is gone. You gave the video away. Now people know what it looks like already. The hit chorus that's supposed to slam and catch people, hopefully, you gave that away already before the song is even out. So, and people are so finicky with stuff like that like they won't go back and listen to the song. They're like, oh, I just heard and saw the best part of it. Okay, that was cool. Yeah, I don't care anymore. Not saying everybody, but that's something too, is figuring out the right timings and assets that you post and how you kind of post that stuff. So I'm really crucial when I'm trying to put stuff out and tease it. Maybe we give them, and I'll tell the bands literally an 8-second snippet, a 5-second snippet, not saying that's the only thing that works, but I feel like, again, especially for trying to build that hype or build that mystique a little bit for an artist that might be growing, that's really seemed to work, even if in small increments, versus again, doing like the, new song this day, and it's like the whole chorus playing in a big chunk of the video or something like that. So what's your take on what should artists do once it's out, release days here, you have your ads going and stuff? I mean, how do you follow it up to keep people interested?
With me, I like to have all of the, events and things that the band has done prior, and not post it. So if they go play, a cool party, and, they have assets to go with that right after release. So they release it, and then you have assets to keep it going, keep feeding the algorithms. So, sort of the way it goes is, feeding the social media. To me, it's sort of like a balloon, like you're blowing the balloon up, right? You're taking up the space. And as soon as you quit taking up that space, those algorithms are like,
gone.
I'm taking you back.
Call it feeding the monster.
Yeah, feeding the monster. So you want to have all the content in advance. And then as that's sort of scheduled out, so you did all these events, you did all these cool things, you kept the content, you didn't, blow your wad per se in advance. You release the song, have the build up to the song, release the song, and then it looks like you're doing things, and you can add the advertisements in there as well. And then as you start doing things, then you can, stagger those in there as well, and then try to make it so you can get to the next release.
And for every song, sorry.
Go ahead.
For every song, you can put like a behind the scenes, like how we did the video, what the song means, all of these things, like the why of it can go around it, and it really gives it more life.
Yeah, and on that note of the algorithms, another big one I noticed too is bands posting stuff that they just post to post. It's not to actually engage anyone. It's not bringing anyone in. And then when you stop getting the same reactions, the algorithms will still get smaller and smaller. So you have to be sure that you're always posting like the proper content.
Oh, absolutely. If you sound like if you're pitching something, if you're saying, check out my link or go here or follow, the algorithms know that you should be paying for that, and that they're going to swallow you until you pay for that advertisement.
Yeah, I think something me and Chris were talking about last week was, when you're leading up to a release, but you haven't really done any of the, you're at the point where you're releasing anything, you don't have the publications ready, just engaging your fan base to start getting the algorithms ready for when you're releasing the music.
Absolutely. Yeah, and people don't see it as authentic if you're constantly asking them to do something. If everything's an ad, say, which song do you like the best? Do a question, like ask a question.
That's why I like TikTok the best, is you have to be authentic there. And you have to, that is starting to become the number one, where people scroll and people don't want to just see a commercial. They want to see reactions. They want to see behind the scenes. What were you feeling when you released that song that day? A lot of my artists have had a lot of great success with TikTok. It's brought in a lot of great opportunities. I even still think there's time. It's still new. And like a lot of Chris, you and I had this, I think it was last week, we had this conversation of sometimes it's like pulling teeth getting an artist on TikTok, and it's
it is. And that comes with the artists that are over 28, 29 years old. When you get the younger artists, they're all over it.
Yeah, that's true though.
Yeah, I have, like in our tour submissions right now, there's tours that are specifically looking for the younger bands with the huge TikTok followings, because they're an older band, they're targeting their demographic, but they want to reach yours too. They don't want.
Wait until we all dive into the metaverse.
Right.
Oh my God.
Everybody's, I'm at the bank wearing my Oculus because I'm trying to talk to some people,
Yeah.
As long as we don't start discussing NFTs in this conversation, that's all I ask.
No.
Please. If I just want to add, Dan, how's Black Veil and like Black Label handling TikTok? If you don't mind me asking, how's
good question?
Yeah.
Black Label Society is completely absent. I guess we should rewind. The way we treat Black Label Society is a side brand of Zakk Wylde. So that's kind of a completely different beast, where Zakk is the brand and all of his bands are kind of other assets within the larger Zakk Wylde portfolio.
I guess my question is, how do you ask an older client, hey, go on this. Yeah.
Zakk crushes it on Instagram. We set up the account for him when Instagram first came out. He was only active on TikTok. He had never had a Facebook page and all that. But Instagram, he's comfortable with it. That's just his personality. You know, realize when you're a professional musician, you're a professional entertainer, you're able to get in on camera mode and entertain. And like that's just personality. And I understand that for him, you know, he's kind of unique in where he is from that kind of old school mentality, but he's able to go and make like a comedy video talking about Kim Kardashian on Instagram that gets like, you know, 3 million views. But Black Veil Brides, however, they're very tuned in to youth culture and what's going on, and they're very easy to coach with what's happening. Like, you know, it's tough getting somebody to make TikTok content if that's not their native social media platform. You know, like the BVB guys, they're from the Instagram, Twitter generation. So I went and found a TikTok creator to go and coach them. And so for anybody that pays attention to our TikTok, that is the story of TikTok. It's that we have this TikTok coach teaching the band how to make content and what to do. And, you know, here's fan content, and, you know, here's Andy trying to figure out how to do a stitch.
But that's a great idea.
That's amazing.
Great.
And that's what I love about it, is that you can push and promote on it. And it's with TikTok, I find that it's people want to see cool and interesting things. I think like Andy learning that's like, I want to watch that. Like, that sounds fucking awesome. Like, you know, with TikTok, well, it seems intimidating to a lot of artists at first, and through various levels of their professionalism and age, it's tough to get on camera and put out a video or go live. It's much easier to take a picture, post an ad mat, and kind of tune out.
Right.
In TikTok, you always have to be engaged and on. But something that makes it easier, at least in my opinion, when explaining it to artists and the importance, it's not so much social media as it is social entertainment. You don't need to talk about your band. You can do whatever the hell you want. I mean, the few artists that I follow on TikTok, they're not talking about their bands. They're, you know, talking about like, here's me doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu or whatever, me commenting on my kids riding a bike. And it's not just limited to TikTok. I like TikTok a lot for musicians, but if you look at Twitch, look at like Ronnie Radke and Matt Heafy's Twitch channels, they very rarely talk about their band, or at least Matt Heafy rarely does. It's like in the life of Matt. And TikTok is no different. It could be, you know, Andy grocery shopping, but here's like our song in the background or their song in the background. So I think with the idea of social entertainment, it makes creating content much easier. And myself included, as I'm trying to curate this content with my artists and develop strategies, it's a lot harder coming up with good captions and good ideas for Instagram versus, just like go on TikTok and, you know, make a dad joke. It'll be great. Everyone will love it.
You're more documenting than creating.
Well, it's fun. It feels like TikTok is a lot more fun, whereas Instagram is very kind of formal, and you only want to put out your absolute best.
The right angle, the right filter.
Yeah,
absolutely. More money on Twitch as well. I mean, I know artists who make a full living on Twitch. So
no, that's a world too that seems to have really taken off. Obviously, it has been, but really has taken off, especially over the COVID times and all that stuff. That, I mean, that's something I personally need to learn more about and understand more about that world. I mean, I get it, but I still don't in depth know the Twitch world.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I that's something that
because Craig Mabbitt from Escape the Fate is killing it.
Yes, he is.
That's amazing. No, that's great to know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Let's see. Okay. Well, let's pop into what'll be our next kind of segment here to discuss. And unfortunately, Dan from incarceration had a family emergency he had to take care of. He wasn't able to pop on and make it with us tonight. So we have Liam here from Dynamic Talent, who was able to pop in kindly, has an incredible artist roster, especially in the heavy world, the more death metal side of things even. But I mean, books all over the United States, all over the world, and can touch base about some things, especially on two sides, since he's a musician as well, and also a booking agent. So, I mean, we can kind of touch base through some of this, and everybody can chime in also, but we have Liam as the booking kind of focus to talk about some of this stuff here. So one of the things, Liam, is like, what do agents and promoters look for? And I know that's kind of an easy broad question and things, but say, you know, if you're trying to get pitched for a tour or for a festival or something like that, what are you truly looking for in a band? I mean, as a whole, is it just numbers? Is it music? Is it preference? So hop in on that one.
So I'll start from two angles, one being if you're a better known band, and one being if you're a lesser known band. Either way, when you're emailing, when you're doing the initial email, you're making the initial contact, the first thing I'm going to look at is the links, and then obviously the numbers. I'm going to listen to the music, but I also want to know what the team around you is. Like Dan was saying earlier, you want to know who the publicist is, you want to know who the manager is, because when you're pushing bands onto tours, it's not necessarily just you that's going to make it happen. The management can make it happen as well. Like Nick can attest to, there's a band that was with Dynamic before their agent left music business, but they ended up on a big festival. It's like their first time in North America, like touring festival, their first time in North America. And I think a lot of that was 10 and 8 pushing with the other agent as well. It's not just the agent pushing, you got to push from all angles. It's if you have a band that's got low streams and no team, then even if they get that agent, like you were saying, where they think that's their golden ticket, you know, if you have no one pushing you and you're not getting the right PR, you're not hitting a fan base, you know, you can have that right agent, but they're not going to be able to land you on the tours you want because the management will still say no.
An agent cannot just wave a magic wand. So let's just put that out there first.
Yeah.
If you are blessed to have an agent believe in you and join your team, they cannot just wave a fucking wand and get you on Black Veil or bring a huge tour. You know, you have to, they are part of your team. So here's something
too, not to cut you off, but here's something too that has always stuck with me. And I can't remember exactly what agent had told me this. And this is years ago. I mean, even probably when I was still touring and things like that, but that's how much it had stuck with me in such a simple thing. But he was just straight up and to the point about it. And I used to email this guy all the time and beg him, please give us a shot, put our band on, you know, we got all this going and all that. And he would always just say, what is this worth to me, basically? You know, and I mean, that could be kind of a jerk comment, but you know, and I mean, I took that and I was like, okay, I get it now. Like it clicked to me to understand. And it's not just an agent, but maybe with a manager or anybody else that you bring in to want to be a part of your team. And this is also, I feel a big misconception of things is people think like, just because I have a band or just because I have music or some streams, here, you get me this now, or you can go do this with it or whatever. I mean, and it's just not that. So, I mean, I think it really is that team effort of building, and the agent, you know, has to have something to work with from the management side or a label side or the band side, especially even if you're the biggest agent, you can't necessarily make money and guarantees appear out of nowhere, you know, unless it's warranted.
And even if it is a smaller band and let's say they don't have those things yet, but you really like their music and you believe in their product, you know, I can then reach out to people that I know and try and get those things lined up for them. And then that way you kind of end up with a product in the end. You know, like I did that with you. Sense. Did that with you with, I don't think they've even released the music yet. But it's the band that had, you know, former members from Dance Gavin Dance and Alter Beast and the Kennedy Veil and whatever. And, you know, like I ended up reaching out, they ended up signing a deal, and now we're going to start working their release. But again, you have to have a product that people believe in for that to work. You know, like he said, I can't just wave a magic wand.
I mean, and especially with booking too, I mean, it gets more and more challenging. There's a lot of artists out there. There's a lot of people who want to go on the road, and it has to make sense, obviously, for all sides, you know, the band, the agent, management, involved.
There has to be things that make you stand out. You know, like there's one band that I booked for where they have like 20,000 monthly listeners, which is, you know, decent for Spotify, nothing crazy. But they have some street cred where they have Ollie Sykes pushing their music, and they have Frankie Paulette, I don't know, say his name, Amir guy, pushing their music. You know, that gives them serious street cred when it comes to pushing them onto tours, because they know that people bigger in the business want to tour with them and want to work with them. And then on the side of where an established band reaches out to you, you know, you want to know, what did they not like with their last agent? What were they missing with their last agent? What are their plans? What do they want to do? Where are they looking to end up in, you know, right now, let's say in 2022?
Of course. Are they realistic with expectations? And so that being the next kind of part here too is, how do you pitch your group, you know, for a tour or for a festival? And I mean, that's not just necessarily for, just an agent, but say if you were an outside band trying to put something together to pitch to get that support slot or something. Yeah. I mean, and you did mention those parts, but I mean, would you rather see at this point in the game kind of very simple, like a quick introductory email and some numbers? Do you still want an EPK? Do you want a simple one sheet? What do you think stands out to agents, especially in that world nowadays?
Let's see. I'm blanking on a word right now, but basically, like if I'm looking at an email, generally they'll have like a short blurb about the band. Mm-hmm. You want to be knowing like, what are they pushing at the time of the tour? Do they have new music coming out? Will there be PR? Does their label have a promo budget for them? Those are the things you want to know when you're looking at them in consideration of a tour.
Absolutely.
And then you want to have, then you want to have all their assets lined up. And then you can kind of pitch to management and go from there. Same idea with a festival.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
It's basically like, like a high pressure sales job in the end.
Of course it is. It's trying to go and convince others to believe, what we all believe, obviously. And that's also a growing thing. It takes time, some move faster than others. Some take time. It's always a building process there. And that's why, again, having that team who can work together and collaborate together is very, very crucial. Let's see, where did that go here?
Chris, I wanted to add.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to add. I pitch for a lot of tours every week. The one thing I tell all bands when they're pitching for tours is don't lie to the agent. If you cannot draw, do not don't say you draw 150 kids and then you go on that tour and you're not drawing shit. That you're not.
That's another big thing you look for. Is, that's another big thing you're looking for is previous sales numbers.
Check in Polestar, or if you have
and if you've got weak markets, be upfront about that. If you can do 600 in Kansas, but you can't do 50 in be upfront, be honest. Don't convincing and selling versus lying. If you wait, don't be upfront about what your actual draw is.
That's a great point too. And keeping track of all that stuff is absolutely crucial. I mean, I won't go too crazy in depth with like Polestar and all that stuff too much, but there is even a tracking source available for artists where they're able to report. And that usually comes through management agents, but it's not something you necessarily always have to have, but you can keep track of your numbers in your own way, or find a way that you can report to what's called Polestar. And that's where you can keep your numbers of headlining, supporting, and then go back in time and reference those numbers for agents and for promoters and things like that.
Yeah, and if you're a smaller band and you're not using Polestar yet, you can still keep track of your numbers yourself, because that's still going to come in handy way later, and people are going to ask you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to know, and just to keep a track so and what markets work for you, what markets maybe didn't work. And all those things. So that brings me to the next point too, is when really is touring right for you as an artist or as a band? Obviously there's two sides of the spectrum to that too you can talk on, but one is, do you go out just to try to market, and it's not really just throwing sheets to the wind, you could call it, or whatever, just to go drive and play to drive? But do you necessarily have to wait until it's the biggest tour or something huge at the same time? I don't know if you want to touch on that or what your opinions are.
Waiting for that biggest tour can really backfire for you, for the fact that when you're pitching to that big tour, you don't have the previous sales numbers. There's a lot of tours that go out where they say, we want a band with a proven X amount of draw. And if you haven't gone out to prove your draw, then you can't pitch to that tour. It's because you can't back those numbers up.
That makes sense.
But I mean, the general rule of thumb I've always used for smaller bands when's touring right for you is, can you sell out your hometown? If you can't sell out your hometown, you probably shouldn't go try and sell it somewhere else. But then at the same time, like I was just looking at like Traders are a good example. They posted, it was yesterday, they posted, our first show in Miami 9 years ago, headlining to 30 people. Our first headlining show in Miami 9 years ago, headlining to 30 people, versus our last headlining show, we're headlining to 850.
Yeah.
So it can really go either way. It just depends on how you're selling yourself.
Now that makes sense too. And I think touring, that's a case by case, depending on, is there any real demand at all for you in any place? I mean, beyond like one person writing you, you know, hey, I really like your band here and come to Arizona or something, obviously not to discredit that, but is there any kind of a demand where you can see it making sense to do so? And if there might not be yet, figuring out, there's so many options of marketing that can kind of tick back to the marketing factor of an artist, but sometimes it could make sense to go out as a support on a tour to get the marketing exposure if there will be proper heads there to play in front of, and figuring out how to do that. Sometimes it might not make sense to go out there and try to do that, but more to spend your marketing or the money that you would spend on touring into online marketing to create more demand and fan base and things. And I don't know if there's an exact way to answer that. I mean, I see in metal, I can say this, I see in metal being on the road a lot more seems to
a lot of people respect the grind.
Yeah. As opposed to like a pop singer or somebody more like a singing, even hip hop and R&B. I don't see them going out on like a 30, 60, 90 day tour as often. It's more like one-off fest spot dates.
And I definitely don't recommend trying to do a full tour before you've even done a weekend somewhere.
Yeah. Just to get your feet wet too, and understand what's going into it, and the how and the budgeting and all that stuff.
And like, you need to have music to push. If you don't have any releases at all, you know, like you're not pushing anything.
Something current too, I could imagine, helps sell, you know, a current product of some sort to put out there. Here's another question too that we get asked all the time, and this will kind of wrap up for the touring and booking until we'll hit our Q&A. I'm sure people have some more questions, but how do you get on major festivals? And again, say if you're just a regional band or a regional artist of some sort, you might not have an agent yet. What steps would you recommend taking to be noticed or to try to get a slot on one of those festivals?
I guess it kind of depends on the festivals too, because like Blue Ridge was a pretty big, you know, as far as like headliners, they had massive headliners, but they still had a lot of local openers selling tickets. So it really depends on where you're looking to get into that. Being the local opener selling tickets is a pretty good way to get your feet wet into getting in and getting those contacts. But otherwise, you know, if you're trying to do it like the old fashioned way, you know, you got to boost your numbers. You have to have good marketing. You have to have a good product, and you have to be professional.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Of course. And I mean, keeping in mind too, finding the right times when to pitch is something that's crucial.
That's a big one. Like even from the agency, you know, each festival breaks down into how you even pitch to them. Some you pitch as a full agency, some you pitch individually. And then once you pitch as a full agency, then you kind of, each individual with their acts follows up with those people at a certain time. And you have to know the time frames of when to pitch. And if you don't know the time frames, just reach out to someone and ask, hey, when's a good time to get in touch?
Here's something that I want to bring up, I guess, to finalize the booking thing that just came to my mind though. How often do you book a year in advance for artists? And I'll tag Dan into this conversation too with some of their clients and things like that. I mean, a lot of times artists don't necessarily have the ability yet, or the large fan capacity yet, or releases to put out a whole year and know what they're doing. But I know certain agents and things already, you know, that I've even spoken to recently are like, oh, we're booked until next December 2022 already. So
I've got tours going out for July 2023 already, and that's just because I need to work out.
So I mean, that just shows
I need to work out work visas.
Right.
You know, the more advanced time you have with that, the easier it is for everybody.
Yeah. And that's something too that requires, I'm sure, a collaboration as well to know, you know, with a label, with marketing, with when singles are coming out, with that far in advance. It's kind of neat to see how far some of that stuff really does plan in advance even.
And even with that, like, it's been kind of like a totally different beast post-COVID, you know. Before, like, it was in July, I was emailing for a tour in May of 2022, and I was getting hit with like 17th hold at some venues.
Oh, wow.
Like, that never happened before.
You might be on a third or something. Yeah, exactly. But no, it really did. It took off. Everybody was eager to get back on the road. And I mean, obviously the larger the client, the longer time span goes into planning it. So Dan, I'll tag you real quick, and then we'll move on to that next thing. But for somebody that you're working with, for example, like a Zakk or Blackville, somebody like that, even a Clutch, I mean, how far out are you guys able to book? Is that a case by case with somebody that's in that headlining capacity? Do you guys know a year in advance the whole tour schedule, the release schedule, all that stuff? Or how do you guys go about that from, again, I guess a larger artist, capacity and planning with touring?
Yeah, I mean, for a large artist, it has to be a minimum year in advance, because you can't just lob out a record. You need to have a tour in support of it. So we know about 18 months or so in advance when we're going to have a record. We secure the release date about a year in advance, maybe 9 months in advance. But we have all these things falling in line, and like Blackville just put out a record 2 weeks ago. We had to be on tour. We need to be in a major city throughout the first week. You need to give the publicist an absolute minimum of 3 months. Shout out to Jamie. But all these things need to fall in place, and it takes a lot of time. And yeah, like some of these holds are ridiculous because every band wants to go out on tour now. You want to make sure you have, if you're headlining, you want to have the right support. You want to have the right tour crew. True. Everything comes together, and it's not quick. And obviously, that not every band needs to plan 18 months ahead of time or whatever. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about these major like national headlining tours, yeah, dude, the agents are planning that way in advance. Just to figure out routing probably takes a month or two of hard work, and then all the revisions. It's not as easy, but
it's so rare that a routing turns out exactly how you planned it.
Probably almost never.
I've had it once.
But that's for some of the small bands, like when I was managing punk rock bands that were maybe still doing club shows, 500 capacity clubs, it was much easier. You can put together a tour and go out 6 months in advance. You still need to have the record lined up. You still need to work it out with the publicist. There's things that need to happen, but it's a lot easier getting a hold, again, at a club versus, at a house of blues that
theater,
you need to go through corporate infrastructure. Whatever. Everything in music takes a long time. I think that's kind of what everyone's been said. So to the listeners, the best thing you could do is have everything ready way in advance. Yeah. If the record label needs masters 3 months in advance, give it to them 4 months in advance.
Yeah.
We recently had not me, but one of the junior agents here. He had one of his bands reach out and say, we need a headlining tour in 2 months from now. And, and then they were mad when the next week it wasn't booked.
Oh, wow. That's a rough one there, which could happen. But no, that makes sense. It's what's the industry? Somebody else had said that stuck with me. It's like the game always of hurry up, then wait. Hurry up and wait. It's just how it is. I don't know why, but it's how
I yell at bands all the time. If you see that tour announced or that festival announced, it's too late. Don't ask to submit for that shit. Oh my God. That drives me crazy. You would think that bands realize that, like, there's actually work that goes in behind the scenes.
Yeah, like a lot of these festivals, the day that it's done, they're planning for the next year already, and they're sending out their headline offers within like 2 weeks.
It happens so fast. It really does. I mean, that's what the 2022 festival season is being booked now. Now, and it's 10 months out. Or
I was with a different agency before I was with Dynamic, and I joined Dynamic in June. And when I joined, I had already missed the submissions for like 90% of the 22 festivals.
How backed up is everything with like the COVID hiatus? Everyone rescheduling all those tours. I mean, is that kind of something you're seeing playing in?
There's I'm Toronto based. So like one example of this would be like the Elmo Combo, which is kind of like Toronto's legendary venue, akin to like the Whiskey A Go Go. Our COVID restrictions are just lifting. So I emailed him because I want to get some of my bands in the right rooms. So I emailed their booker reaching out, and he's not taking any new bookings until January after he's rescheduled everything that canceled from COVID. And then even then, like a lot of there's a tour that was, it's not announced yet, but it was going out. It was planned pre-COVID. They kept replanning it. And then eventually, with all the revisions, each band had to break off and do their own headliner in the end.
Yeah.
So, you know, like everything is pretty backed up in terms, like I would generally never book out to July 2023 before.
Sure. But you have to get those holds. And I totally understand what you're saying. Cause even a few,
and you need those holds.
And
you need those holds to get their work visas if they're not from the States. So
something else to keep in mind. Yeah.
You need to be planning ahead. And on that note too, for any Canadian bands, because a lot of them don't know about these, but usually when they're applying for their work visas, they'll be doing individual contracts per show that's signed by the promoter for each state, which can take up like, you know, a month of time, because how often does a promoter actually sign paperwork on time? You know, you can actually, what I did was I emailed like the head of the CFM, and they sent me a hybrid contract, which for some reason isn't public knowledge. But you can get a hybrid contract where you put your routing on there and your agent signs for you. I see. And then that way you don't need the individual contracts for everything. You can expedite the process.
That's really great to know. Absolutely. And that's for Canada, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like Canada into the States.
Makes sense.
Canada's amazing for artists, though. The Factor program in and of itself.
Ask their grants. Oh my God.
I mean, they care about the arts. Whoa.
Yeah, I mean, even though not on the music side, Factor pays for Trailer Park Boys.
Wow. Oh, that's neat, though. That's, at least, again, it's supporting the arts, too. I mean, there might...
And like Canada doesn't do any work visas for bands to come here. That's viewed as a cultural exchange, quote unquote.
That's amazing. So, I mean, definitely would try to get some more artists to cross and, you know, come and collaborate. That'd be really amazing. Yeah,
like the biggest problems I've been having with that just borders during COVID. You know, there's one band who they had got flown out to Europe to do a festival and then flew back to Canada, and they couldn't enter the States for their headlining tour the next week because they had traveled too closely.
Oh, I see.
And like there's bands getting denied for not getting their negative tests and proof of vaccination and whatever. So
that can pose quite tricky. And I mean, I hope as time will progress here, especially into the next year, you know, that will kind of not just go away, but, you know, come back to somewhat easier normality for people. Obviously, we all hope. But
I mean, like we just came back to standing full capacity shows 2 weeks ago.
Wow. So it's such a variable then, place to place too. And that's another challenge that an agent, you know, is hit with now. If you have to go to different markets, even in the United States alone, every city is different right now. And they're you know, precautions and here's this and here's this. So not only are you challenged with the hold situation and trying to book, but then the things behind the scenes, again, people might not think of, you know, that agent or others have to go through.
They're starting to be, you know, they're sending out tours where they'll either be COVID friendly or not COVID friendly, you know, and they're including that in the pitches now. Because they want, like, because every artist needs to be aware.
Right. And things will continue to get better as we hope for it. So I want to bring up our next topic here, which will be merchandising and obviously profiting from that. I mean, I think that's a super, super crucial thing that obviously most artists, bands are aware of. You have to have t-shirts, you have to sell CDs, you put the stuff out, you can make money from it. But I don't feel like enough artists, I guess, take a step back and look at their brand, what they're trying to sell, how they're trying to sell it, looking at the modern examples that are out there. So, I mean, tagging in Tim here to kind of chat with this. Tim, I know you do a lot of really awesome branding stuff, especially with your artists. I mean, you're always telling me about something new that might be coming out that's a collaboration or something really cool, from barbecue sauces to, you know, custom liquors, tennis shoes I've seen. I mean, all kinds of things like that. So let's touch in a little bit on how your brand is important as a band and having different merchandise opportunities in today's world, things you can utilize.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, so you know, you can start a merchandising, you know, website through Shopify or anything like that, and also put your own brands in there as well. You know, they offer a lot of really cool stuff. This cup I'm drinking out of right here, it's white on the inside, black, says hell yeah. You know, that's from a Shopify site Luke Fletcher runs. And you can put a lot of different items on there, but what I tend to do is try to stray away from just the t-shirts and the hoodies and things like that. One time, Tom Maxwell is in a band called Hell Yeah. We're on the phone and he just says the most incredible asshole shit, but very tactfully, right? And I kept telling him, I said, Tom, it's hilarious. Yeah, I kept calling them Tomisms. And we came up with the idea to put insults in fortune cookies.
Nice.
And, so I called a fortune cookie company, and I pay $70 for 500 fortune cookies with 17 different insults in it, and I sell the whole box to Airbnb companies, people that have Airbnbs, put them in there, $170 a box plus shipping. So I make $100 per box that it goes out. Yeah. I'll take the little Chinese carryout boxes.
Yeah.
And I sticker to put on it. I put 12 insults in it, and I sell those for $15. 12 fortune cookies. It's change, right? And the profit rolls and rolls and rolls. And you can change it too, per band or per season or whatever it may be. And people like it. And then, like shoe stores, I would go to where you can customize Vans, and you can pass the artwork for your own brand. And I just started doing it. Like people would order it. It cost me $90 for this pair of Vans, but I would sell them for $160.
Yeah.
I'd put them on my site. And my God, people would buy it. And every time they'd buy one, I'd have to go to the Vans site and make it, because they wouldn't mass order it, right? But, the band or myself, whoever we were doing it with, we'd make another $100 off of it,
That's creative too. And I think a lot of artists, I mean, I've seen this a long ways ago, but I think still telling bands and artists this, I don't think it works. I mean, depending on what your audience is and your demographic, but I think staying modern with what people want to wear that are your audience is important. Your audience might not want to just have your band logo on a shirt or your faces on a shirt or something like that. So keeping in touch with your, other competition, but seeing what's working for them. And I know I've heard a lot of different people say this, but it is a brand, so it doesn't necessarily always have to have your band logo on it or even your band name, but something that's wearable, something that's cool, and something that you can use. It's an everyday item, whether it be a t-shirt, but maybe it's just got a little emblem on it. It doesn't say, if you want to wear it every day and you're trying to go to work or something like that, you might not want to have a huge metal logo or something like that. Offering the things that fit and blend to your crowd is super important in today's world, and not limiting yourself to that. Not being afraid. Might as well brand it if you can, if people use it, especially things like coffee, or tennis shoes, or as you said, fortune cookies, anything you can come up with. You don't have to have mega budgets to pull it off most cases, or huge help or huge backing. It's more about being creative and figuring out those little ways that you can level up, with your profit, exactly like you had mentioned about that. And I think you had said, what was the print company? I use Printful as an example, but same type of a thing where you can set up now for zero cost, especially. And this is such a game changer for musicians, to where you used to have a web store, and some people still can or do, but you don't have to print 25 of each design, have a back stock sitting there, come up with all this money, which 9 times out of 10, again, artists don't have like a merchandising advance deal or anything like that yet. You can have 10 or 20 different designs that work on a site and customize it and print and ship that as it sells and collect your profit, instead of sitting on back warehousing and having to ship it yourself and all that. So I think that's something I'll constantly preach out there too, to artists to look into a Printful or somewhere like that, comparable, where print on demand is an option for you. Yeah, absolutely. And, I found that, there's a long period of time, and you guys might have seen it too, where people just weren't wearing band shirts. It just sort of went away, right? And then 21 Pilots came out, and they had like 2 little dots and a line. And I'd see those in the stores, even JCPenney's, and people buying that hat. It's a cool emblem, and they might not even know what 21 Pilots is. So I call that brand X. You can create a brand X that just goes out, and people identify it as the band if they know the band, but also people wear it because they think it's a cool design. Sure. Winning. And Chris, about the hot sauce, right? Yeah. The convalescent sauce, tons of hot sauce. Sure. And I just reached out to I got different hot sauce companies, and they drop ship it for me as well, or they'll send us a case for the band to go on tour, and you just white label things, as many different things as you can, and see what holds and sells and keep it interesting, because just textiles and just shirts,
they just don't seem to be the main seller all the time.
No, it's a great point. And I like to, again, try to be creative with items that your target fan base or age demographic even will use. Myself is in my 30s now, I'm not necessarily as apt to go buy, again, I always reference, but like the big metal logo shirt or something like that, if I just want to wear it to the store, I mean, I will, but like, I'm simple, I want just like that small little emblem or something cool. I'll still support my favorite artist or band in some way that works for me. But even that, like, I'd rather purchase maybe a coffee mug at this point of my age than like a death metal shirt or a coffee, or a lighter or something that's more usable and it still looks cool and supports that artist, but not just like the standard black band t-shirt, which still could work for some, but being open and creative with that at any point, even if you have one fan, I think is crucial today for you. And that's one of the best money makers. I mean, with streams paying, 0.001 cents and all that stuff. I mean, you can make, good profit on merchandise at any point in your career. Again, if you figure out the niche of selling, the how to sell, and use that, to your advantage.
Yeah, one thing I'm seeing a lot of metal bands do is like a fall merch drop, a summer merch drop, spring merch drop, and then they limit them.
Yeah.
So people get a lot more excited and they buy them a lot faster.
Yeah,
and just like a fashion brand would be, and with fall, winter, dropping those different lines, and it keeps it not boring too for having the same design sit there. And I used to see that all the time. It would drive me bonkers. A band would be like, "Oh, we've got 3 designs," and they would sit with those 3 for 2 years or something, just only those. Then I'd be like, why? But so staying current with the different seasons is really creative. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And something else with it too is instead of just putting it up there, sharing the link, advertise and for all you guys, just Google like a marketing funnel and just follow the marketing funnel and follow it all the way through. And put your marketing out there and your return on investment, and keep it going, because just posting it, check out my link, go check out my merch, it's just not going to go anywhere when you're starting out.
And posting things too that are showing people utilizing it instead of just a photo and buy this, if you're actually using it, or having people maybe review the product in some way. Again, if it's like a hot sauce, review this is good. Don't be afraid to send out a few samples to some influencers if you can connect with them, or other people that you can try to co-brand with or collaborate with. And you send them, the product to expose to people or try or give a review of in some way, shape, or form. Or contests, things like that, to get people involved, sharing, what the new merchandise or limited item might be, for a chance to get one of those. I've found to work depending too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like what Jamie was saying with bringing your personal life into your marketing, you can do that with your merch items too.
Yes.
Like bands that, like there's a metal band that always says how much they love hot sauce, and their fans started bringing them hot sauce to shows to try, and then they just dropped their own really hot sauce.
Yeah.
You can do things like that with anything.
Absolutely.
I guess the last thing I'll put in here, just for what it's worth, so musicians that are here tuned in do know, though, as you grow in time, obviously you don't always have to rely on something like just a print on demand source. If you have big bulk orders, or if you need to go on a tour, there's merchandising companies out there that once you kind of have some numbers, you can partner with them, and they kind of take the stress off of your shoulders of helping design assets, helping come up with new things that are trendy, depending on the company, again, are able to supply and demand tour merchandise for you, print the stuff for you, build and maintain your web store for you, which is really awesome. And then something that's, again, unique, but does happen, is a merchandising advance, where if you reach the right plateau or circumstance with the company, you can actually sign, depending percentage of your brand away, your sales away, depending, just like a record company would go, for an advance on your merchandise sales, to utilize as you would best see fit, case by case basis. But that is also a possibility in time, keeping in mind that your merchandise is separate from your music, your other entities and things like that. So that is, and should be looked at, I think, as its own brand, its own lane. And oftentimes too, and Dan, maybe you can chime in on this too, or Tim, or anybody, Nick, bands even will get their own LLC and corporation and trademarks as you reach that point, for just your merchandise, for just that, and have it, again, set up as its own kind of company, its own entity. It earns its own way, even your splits and profits. compared to when music comes in or touring merchandise, or I'm sorry, when touring comes in, other things like that. It's its own entity.
And that's also great too, in case and the whole purpose of that too is, you know, if you have to file bankruptcy on one thing, it's called a series LLC or a series corporation. You're only touching that particular thing. So maybe it's just your merch. So then you don't have to worry about whatever's in your band bank account going down, or your songs, or however. So as a band gets bigger and bigger and you get to the, you know, superstar level, you will have multiple companies underneath kind of handling different aspects and assets of your business as a band.
Awesome. Anybody else want to chime in there? If not, I'm going to just pop right into, I mean, that pretty much covered most of the topics. I mean, I want to get enough time for a Q&A and just for us to all kind of chat it out a little bit too, and kind of wrap it up here. So let me see, does anybody have any questions that's tuned into here? And I'm going to try to figure out the best way. I don't know if some of you are on video or might type the questions. Let's see here.
Before we go into the questions for the other panelists, I'm just curious, going off the merch, what's the most interesting merch item you've ever seen, or one of your personal favorites that always just sticks to you?
One of the funniest ones I saw was in Rammstein pre-order. They all made custom molded dildos.
That is funny.
That was like probably like 15 years ago, and I still think about it. Like, it worked. They sold out. I think they made 500. They sold out in like a day. People just thought it was funny, and it's unique. I don't think anyone else has done it.
Wow, that is unique, and that's funny though that they all sold out. Let's see here, just double checking to see if anybody that's popped on might have any questions. I don't know if they'll want to type it or just chime in through the chat here. And does anybody that's on here have anything else that they might want to add into, I mean, about releasing or being a musician or doing any of that stuff?
Something I didn't really touch on the touring, but this is more on the marketing as well, as making sure that you're marketing your tour after it's announced. You can't just announce it and then never talk about it again. Getting targeted ads in each city is a pretty good idea. Giving promoters advertiser access to your Facebook so that they can do that for you. Maybe you make a video for each city, but then it comes with the advertisement budget for the promoters. They go onto your Facebook and they target that to their demographic.
To add to that,
absolutely,
that is something I wish more bands did. You could seriously, like, if you have a 20-day tour coming up, 30-day tour, seriously go up against the wall. Hey, we're so-and-so, we're playing Cleveland. Save it. Hey, we're so-and-so, we're playing Philadelphia at Milkbone. Or, hey, we're playing Columbus. And then send that to your promoters. They will love you for that shit.
Yeah.
And then they can share. Just little things like that. Just to, what's that?
Sorry. Yeah, so it's a really good idea. Just even on my end, I'm emailing promoters every Friday, and or every Friday or every Monday, I'm asking for a ticket count. Anywhere where the markets are lower than the rest of them, I'm asking, what do you need from us to bring these tickets up? Because no one wants to have it.
Oh, sorry. To that end, I do regional tour press when I get from the agent that the count is low in a particular market, then I go to the newspapers in that market.
That's really interesting. And helpful, obviously, too. And I mean, that I can only imagine that could be a challenge depending on the artist, too, though. That's where telling your story is crucial and a newspaper type of element, I'm sure, as opposed to, oh, this rock band's just coming through town, or this, whoever it may be, random example there. But
and regional television sometimes works, too, if, you're willing to go on the regional morning show. If you're willing to wake up early, most bands are not. I'll tell you that. But, that generally works. And also another thing that I wanted to mention, philanthropy is a really valid way to promote a band. right now I have an artist who did a video about his background, his childhood, and he suffered a lot of domestic violence in his home. So we put some helplines at the end of the video for people who are suffering as well. And, you know, charitable organizations, they definitely want you to use your platform to help them, and it helps you as well.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. That's a great recommendation. So everybody be sure to keep that one in mind. Well, I don't think anybody has any questions here that I can see.
Oh, yeah. I could throw out a question, actually.
Oh, there we are.
I've
Hey.
got one later after him.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Go ahead, guys. Sorry.
So this is basically, I mean, for anyone, but when deciding to like work with an artist or band or a client, like what's the first quality or attribute you're looking for besides it being a good product or, you know, a great sound?
That's an awesome question.
Yeah, that is a really great question. I immediately look, are you willing to work? Are you realistic? And do you have a following or a plan to amass a following?
And being realistic is something that a lot of bands don't talk about. If you want to be a touring musician and you're starting out and you've got a full 9-to-5 job, 3 kids, a side job. I had one band approach me. We want to go on tour. They had 2 guitarists, EMT, one worked at a bank. I'm like, how, like, you have to be very realistic about doing this and being in a band, you know. And I know what Dan's, I remember Dan saying early in the conversation about, you know, being a band first, you know. I think when the traction does get there, it's, you know, if you want to be a touring musician, like, you can't, it's the trade. You have to be very realistic.
Yeah, I mean, I think on a management side too, or for developing an act and working with them along the way, I mean, I think things that I look for personally, I honestly don't usually go to like a Spotify number count first, or even like, do they have a lot of followers or anything? The first thing I go to is to listen to just the music and see, does this connect with me? Is it something that I feel like I vibe with? And more importantly, is it something that I feel like myself or our firm, the people we have as a part of our team, can actually help or bring anything to the table for? Beyond saying like, this is a badass song or this isn't, you know, an awesome release or something. I want to know that I can help that person better than what they're already doing, obviously. And that's a part of transparency too, on talking with artists of any sizes, having that conversation of what are your goals? What is your vision? Where do you see yourself, or what do you already have happening? And that's where I'll kind of take from there, look at the numbers and look at other things going on, if I feel that we can bring something valid to the mix, and from there trying to figure out how to meet in the middle on taking their vision and ideas and things that they already have kind of going. And if I know, again, it's going to be able to work, hopefully, or it makes sense, seems to make sense, then we kind of bring in our ideas, clash them in the middle, and try to guide that brand, you know, into a bigger place.
Yeah, I like to have something where, I mean, I've heard bands that I really love and they're amazing and they're pulling the crowd, but I just couldn't open the doors for them. I would not take an artist that, you know, I'm out there fishing in the pond, or it's not, you know, I'm not going to pick up a jam band. I just don't work jam bands. I wouldn't know what to do with one, you know?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking for artists that I know how to work with.
Yeah.
You know,
so yeah, just trying to find somebody that fits in. And I mean, most cases, again, like if you're a rocker, like in the rock or metal world, I mean, on social media and things, you kind of tend to follow that group anyways. You follow that crowd, you kind of swim with that crowd, give or take. So it's like, in a way, it could be the same, I would assume, for, you know, maybe pop or hip hop or other things. Pay attention to what's working for others, or who might be working for others and how, and try to emulate that in your own way, to doing that too. I do have some here before somebody else pops in with video. There's a text question here. When trying to reach out to potential collaborators, how many attempts should you try before it starts to get annoying and potentially drive them away?
That's
what do you mean by collaborators? Are you talking social media? Are you talking other bands? What do you mean? Start.
I'm not sure on that. We'll wait and see. But I mean, let's hypothetical and just say, another influencer or another famous band member.
It can kind of go either way, because sometimes they're just so busy they miss your emails, and the follow-ups actually help a lot. And then other times, they don't care and they just don't even care to respond. But if they didn't care to respond in the first place, then it's not going to drive them away any further.
Jamie, you want to chime in on anything there from
I mean, I annoy people for a living, so that's
we
kind
all
of
do.
Right? Yeah, we all do.
neither here nor there for me. I pretend it's the first time I've ever spoken to them when I hit them up for the 8th time. So, there you go. But I also took something that was way out of my wheelhouse this year, which was strange for me, but I kind of knew I could kill on it. I took a Christmas music artist this year.
Nice, there you are.
But you do it when you think you know what to do with it. I mean, I got her on Good Morning America.
Wow.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So it's just for me, it's what I can kill on. If I can kill on it, I'll take it.
I'm just picturing the beginning of Love Actually, where they're remaking the whatever hit into a Christmas song.
So he was asking, by the way, just to finish that up, he was asking about, I guess, collaborators in general, though, but more so like having a podcast and trying to reach out to get maybe other influencers or famous artists or things like that. So Jamie, again, like if we were reaching out to you to try to get Brandon Boyd, I mean, do you look at things like, do you ever give anybody a chance, kind of like a tour, an agent?
I do. I always give people a chance, and I'll tell you why. Because the last time I did it, like when I did it years ago, the first time I did it rather, the guy wound up, he was this Australian guy who had a blog, and I gave him a chance because he was a nice guy. And then he went back to Australia and became the editor of Rolling Stone Australia.
Wow.
So
yes.
That worked out nicely for me.
Absolutely.
So I'll always take a chance on people if they're nice.
That makes sense.
So, and believe me, there's so many people that are not nice to me,
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you're looking to get guests on your show, email a bunch of publicists and be ready to say yes to their lesser known artists if you want their bigger artists.
Yeah. And
like, you're not going to get my Brandon Boyd if you don't book my Monarch, like you're just not.
It's a helping collaboration. Again, it's helping the publicist and helping both get the exposure. And of course, very important with that. So hopefully that can be helpful there. Some more, Bill. Let's see who was next with the question. Was that you, Corey? I think I saw you.
Yeah. That was actually kind of my question, was more the influencer people. Is there any tips for like I guess, for example, like we're a death metal band, we've hired PR, but they never talk about pushing our releases to influencers. So
that's because it's not really PR.
Okay. So do you have any tips like on it? Should I just be reaching out to those kind of people? And
well, it depends on which kind of people. I mean, there's YouTube reaction influencers who, like, you can just hit them up on their Instagram and be like, hey, can I send you my music? I really believe in bands that are not ready for full-on PR doing their own outreach. I think, people that do reaction videos, and there's also a site called Submit Hub. And if you look at it, it's very low cost. You can submit your band. I've had bands do it and they've gotten on playlists on Spotify through it. So Absolutely. It's definitely worthwhile for some things.
Yeah. I know of Submit Hub too. And I mean, I think that's, Corey, it's a great question too. I mean, there's so many different like assets and angles and things to that. Sometimes there's companies that manage influencers that you might be able to pick even maybe a certain demographic, and they have 10 of those styled that can make sense. Other times reaching out to them, yourself and trying to build rapport. I'm sure that's case by case, but definitely that's a great question.
And also there's another thing that I really should mention. When you're doing it yourself, make up another email address and pretend you're not you, because then you're not going to get honest feedback from people if they think they're going to insult you personally. And, you're going to have to take some, shit.
I've actually had a band do that to get management before. They made up a management company, reached out to a bigger manager, and ended up with a big management that way.
Yeah, I mean, just because nobody wants to say no to you as the artist, because it's like, that's your baby, that's your music. But, they'll say no to, Joe Schmo publicist that you made up and made an email for.
That makes sense.
I mean, the other thing you can do too is Cameo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not like I've seen bands do it where, like, I thought you have to do it in a very specific way. Like, one band, they hired a bunch of people to just trash talk their album. Mm-hmm. And then they put that out. It's a lot funnier, and people will notice it more than you paying someone to say how much I love your album.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think as far as the follow-ups go, it depends on, a follow-up takes, in my opinion, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. And it all depends on, if you followed up 15 times, probably not going to happen. There's been some times where, I had to follow up 10, 11, 12 times to get through to someone. It just all depends. I think, the main thing here is that to succeed in music, you're going to be told no. You're going to be told no. I get told no 1,000 times a week. Like you have to develop such thick skin, and now it bounces off. I go into every battle expecting to be told no, because my job is to convert those no's into yeses. And you'll have bands out there, they'll send out one email, and then I'll ask them, did you follow up? Like, because you get the deal, you get the coverage, you get the press, you get that in the follow-up. Not only that, I know some outlets and some publications, they don't respond to the first one. They respond to the second one, because, and that's not all of them, it's just some. Mm-hmm. They do that as a test of like, oh, this person followed up. They care. It shows they're putting in a little bit of initiative. I'm not saying all publications do that, but anyways, my point is, following up, you will get the tours, the coverage, the press, it's the consistency. All of this, it comes down to consistency. No
That's
matter.
Very true too. I mean, consistency and finding what works and fine tuning that along the way. But I mean, consistency is super crucial. And I've even seen that happen recently. And this is zero to do with even music related, but on a YouTube channel this year, someone that is a close friend and was working with me in the past, decided to make their own kind of reaction channel and just try this out and staying consistent with it, but $0 spent as far as ads went, and just stayed consistent, posting, I think, twice a week or 3 times a week, but always consistent with it. And I watched it grow, and no joke, I saw him on YouTube. Again, this could be a rarity, but from 0 subscribers, 1,000 subscribers, 20,000 subscribers, I think right now. And they started this, no joke, in January of this year. So not even a year, they're about to hit almost 100,000 or something like that. I think it is, just from consistency. They found a right target market and thing to talk about. He found kind of a comical way to deliver it that is his natural persona. He's not really acting necessarily, but it just clicked and seemed to work, at the right time and place. But I mean, I asked him even, what's your secret? Did you have any secret? What was it? And he said, really just consistency. Once I figured out my first videos and posting timing and figuring that out and staying with it. So, I mean, I feel like that's in a way similar, not obviously different, but in a way similar though, to your brand, your music, what you're doing, whether you have a podcast even or anything else. Consistency in what you're delivering to the people is huge.
Because that's the one thing you can control, is how much work you put into something. And when you do it, it's not if this will blow up, it's when this will blow up, if you keep doing it. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, like another thing, just, don't be scared. If they say no, don't be scared to ask why. Because, you have to learn what will end up making it work if you want to work with them later.
Yeah, feedback's super important.
That's true, feedback, and trying to never burn bridges.
That's true. Don't burn bridges. But with that being said, someone's no, there's 10 billion people on this planet. Someone's one no, they're not the gatekeeper for every other person, you know. Now, if you're starting to get like, okay, I'm on like publication number 60 and they're passing, okay. But I'm just saying, like, don't let one no stop you. Don't let one bad review stop you.
Yeah.
All my bands, I tell my bands, if you have enough time to read, like, I don't know what it is with bands. They could have 500,000 likes, 500,000 thumbs up, but they get that one. They focus on that one. I always tell my bands, if you have time to focus on that one negative fucking comment, you're not busy enough. Go write a song, go do a TikTok, stop. Don't let the one.
Amen.
I remember I used to live with the drummer from a band called The Rise and Ruin, and they were on Victory Records back like, would that be like 15 years ago? I remember it was the first thing he told me, because I was like 18 at the time, and he goes, never fucking read your reviews.
Yeah. You post it and then you ghost it. That's what you do.
Right. There you go. I love that. Let's see. Any other questions? I don't see any other ones that are on here. Do you have anything else? Anybody? Yeah.
Yeah. I want to chime in. I've got a couple comments.
Totally.
First, to Trey, to answer your question, what do people look for? They look for somebody that can capture somebody else's attention and then keep it. Whether it's through music, through social media posts, what the medium doesn't matter. What matters is that they can have people paying attention to them, because ultimately that's what we're all selling is, we're selling a product for your attention. And like, I know that's not a very sexy answer, but that is the reality. Like, no matter who you talk to, whether it's going to be a record label executive, the A&R guy, whatever, they're going to want to know, why should somebody pay attention to you? I used to work at this record label called Sumerian Records, and we would ask bands, well, why would we buy your CD over Born of Osiris? And like, it's a fucked up thing to ask, but you need to be able to answer that. And you need to be able to say, yeah, well, because I'm more charismatic. Or whatever the answer is, you need to be able to give that answer. You need to be able to perform to that level, because it's true. Right now in the social media age, especially right now in the social media age and social entertainment age, your competition is not the band down the street. It's like Pornhub and memes and cats and like the entire world is at your fingertips. And, we make jokes about the metaverse, but bands are making millions, or performers are making millions playing in the metaverse. I mean, Barack Obama on his presidential campaign, on his first one, was doing speeches on Second Life. Wow. Exactly. So you need to be able to court attention however you can get it. I'm not saying go and do some awful thing and get negative attention.
That band this weekend at the fest.
Yeah. Oh, but you need to get people paying attention to you. And that will make it much easier, because when you are going back to your question, Trey, what do they look for? I don't want a band to approach me. And frankly, I don't know anybody with a lot of credibility within the music industry that wants a band to approach them. They want to find it on their own, because it's like a magical experience when I discover a band on YouTube and I'm blown away. And I remember I found a band out of Ohio that I immediately emailed Chris or called him. I was like, oh, dude, do you know these guys? We got to talk to them, set up a meeting, get me on the phone with dude. And like these sort of things happen all the time. And it's the power of discovery. And if you're really in it for the music and it's important to you to like the product or to like the band or the musician, you're going to want to discover it on their own. And the only way you're going to do that is if somebody can court your attention. So whatever, I don't want to, kind of be so blunt, but it's the truth. Your music is absolutely important, but how you present your music is just as important. Yeah. Going to the podcast question, which is a really good question on how to get guests. There's a huge, there's a big difference in quality of podcast and quality of interviewer. If you want to talk to somebody, to a musician, to somebody that's a performer, you're going to need to be a good interviewer and create a quality product. Again, it's no different than a band making a good song. You need to have a good podcast. And I'm not saying yours is necessarily bad, but if you're having trouble getting guests, you should take a listen and find out, like, is there a lot of uhs and ums? And I know I speak like that, but the higher quality podcasts, they edit that out. They have pro editing. There's a certain quality that goes into it that sounds like the host is a professional broadcaster. And for professional interviewers that know how to ask those right questions, how to fill up an hour of space, those are priceless. Like that's the difference between a 6-page spread in Rolling Stone and like a little blurb that no one's going to read. And I'm sure Jamie can chime in with a lot about that. I have
listened in on some terrible interviews before. Absolutely. I've butted in and started asking questions myself.
Right. But when you listen to a good one and you have a good broadcaster or interviewer, it's a world of difference. It's compelling. You can't turn away from it. And if you want the perfect example, Ryan Downey,
yes,
very famous interviewer, journalist, one of the most awesome dudes in the music industry. He did the first interview with Tim Lambesis after all the trouble with his wife and attempted murder charges. Reading that interview is it's amazing. You don't want to put it down. And myself, I'm feeling a little guilty reading it, like trying to figure out what's going on in the mind of this guy. But it brings out these emotions, and very few interviewers can do that. You want to strive to be that, to ask those questions so that the subject tells that story, to bring in that readership. And that's just one that immediately came to mind. It's kind of relevant.
It's all about research. I mean, Jason Rockman in Canada is amazing. He just started his own podcast, the Rockman Power Hour, and he's one of the better interviewers I've worked with.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good interviewers, and a lot of them are independent people. It's not these big corporate media types all the time. Sometimes it's just somebody with a microphone and an iPhone that's just, they're good on camera. They care and they ask these questions. So it's not always like the big dude. And what was that? Whatever. So for musicians, at least when I'm tasked with approving or declining podcast requests, which happens frequently, I do listen to make sure that they can, present my artist in a good light, and they can have a good quality product. Sorry. I
mean, even with that, like, look at if you ever watch Hot Ones, look how in depth he goes into researching all of his guests, and then you see the questions that come out of it.
Nardwuar is a really good one too. The depth he goes into reviewing hip hop artists. He does extreme research.
It's really easy for someone just to go on Wikipedia and pull out like kind of trivia facts or whatever, if it's even facts on Wikipedia. It's different when the person is a fan of the band or knows the right questions to ask to really hit.
That's why I like Shane from Silverstein's podcast, Lead Singer Syndrome. All their artists are doing great podcasts.
Yeah, if the person with the podcast question is listening, I can tell you flat out, the absolute number one question that I think every band member hates the most is, who are your influences for this record? How did you get the band name? Because they answer that 1,000 times. That is the clearest sign of an interviewer that probably shouldn't be interviewing bands. I know, shitty thing to say, but you can dig deep.
Cut and dry.
What's that?
I was saying it's that standard kind of cut and dry question that you can pick off pretty quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, your question should be tailored to that artist, because if they've made it far enough to where you want to have them on your podcast or in your magazine or on your blog or whatever, they're probably interesting enough to tell some cool stories if you ask them what the stories are.
Absolutely.
And have a publicist that they're too afraid to disappoint. That always works for me.
Let's see here. Anybody else have anything else they want to add in? I'm trying to check through here and see if there might be any questions that I might have missed.
Yeah, well, I guess I've got a couple questions for oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, I mean, I was just I don't want to push this over, but I was kind of thinking about, like, my first question had a little bit of a follow-up, like, of those artists, like Dan, when you said you found that great one in Ohio, what are some of those red flags that might pop out to you where you're like, this is great music, but something's off here?
Definitely buying social media followers or views or like, and anything bought. Like, I don't care if I find an interesting person, let's say on like Instagram or Twitter or whatever, I don't care how many followers they have, because you can eventually build up to that. Or if they can't really play guitar well or sing well, like some of these are learned skills. Like, I mean, they have to be musically competent, but a lot of these are learned skills. But the kind of X factor of, are they interesting, charismatic, can they command an audience? That's a lot harder to train. That I certainly can't train that. I'm not a media coach. I don't know a media coach that can turn somebody from me into like Lemmy or Corey Taylor. Those are like once in a generation type people. But at a certain point, those people didn't have Twitter. They didn't, people weren't born with these massive followings. So you got to start somewhere. But yeah, going back to your question, a huge red flag is bot likes, bot social media,
and you can spot that so easy.
Yeah, it's not even. It's not worth doing.
Yeah, like if you have 20,000 likes on Facebook, where you get 3 reactions on your posts.
Yeah, but yeah, like there's a when you start talking to bands, and this unfortunately happens a lot. Nature of the business, you do run into some bigger like macro red flags like alcoholism, drug addiction, mental health, and those are things that you can't overlook. And man, a panelist kind of touched on it real quick earlier, but their responsibilities. Is this like, sometimes and especially my early days, I found myself asking myself, is this person capable of being locked in a tin box for months at a time with other people? And like if someone's kind of bordering, let's say, alcoholism, or they have mental health problems and they need to speak to their therapist regularly, and these are humans, these are real problems that have come up, it's probably not the best idea to encourage that person to immediately go on tour, because that's going to be a huge life change. If they're kind of trying to struggle with managing their addiction, they may fall head first right into it. Again, like such to say, but it happens frequently. Like there's a lot of unspoken about mental health problems that come with being a performer. And these are red flags that come up when you're maybe having your first initial few talks. So some musicians will be very honest with you and they'll tell you what their struggles are. And sometimes, like, man, they're a killer musician, they're hitting all the right spots, but you can't put this person on the road, or at least they're not mentally stable enough right now to do it. I'm not saying they're ruined forever, but sometimes it's like, hey, you know what? You need to work on getting your life together, work on your sobriety, work on your overall mental health before you can start playing these shows, before you can go on Warped Tour. You need to just have a few more sessions with your therapist, whatever the case is.
Yeah, like on our end too, like you need to look out for the well-being of your artist more than just like, your money. Like we had a client that relapsed right before a tour, and we just canceled the tour because it wasn't worth bringing him out on tour at that point.
Yeah, I mean, and you have to know when's the right time, and that's a part of having great team members. Hopefully they don't put you into those positions as you grow, especially as a musician, into uncomfortable type positions that compromises you or your health or anything else, obviously. It's important to have that team. Sorry, my mic cut out there. It's important to have that team though, that's there with you, and that, again, you can be honest with, like you said, Dan.
I wanted to add, as far as red flags, I would say, even for anyone, I would say from a musician looking at the business side, say building your team, I use this a lot, is if 2 or 3 different people who don't know each other give you the same negative review of an individual, that review is probably going to be true. That label, that manager, that agent, that company, whatever. Again, going back, do your due diligence. that's a big red flag for me. If I, even if there's, or, if there's a band that I know that, okay, they're hitting me up, but I know they work with one of my friends in the business. That's a red flag. Or they used to work with one of my friends in the business and they start shit talking, not even just a friend. That's a big red flag for me in a band. As a manager looking at a band, that's a big red flag. They don't even have to be my friend. I'm very big on don't speak ill of anyone in this business. This is a very small business.
That's very true.
We're all shaking our heads. I guarantee you, all of us have at least 5 connections somehow, some way. But yeah, that's a big red flag. Not even just, I can't speak for everyone else here, but I would say that's a big red flag is if an artist goes into a meeting, the next thing they're like, that agent and that label, and they didn't do this job, and that's a red flag.
Yeah, and on that kind of note too, you want to be sure that whoever you're looking at, either the manager or agent or publicist, you want to be sure that they can prioritize you, because even if they have like all these bands that fit with your sound and it's great, if they can't prioritize you because they're so busy with their other clients, then you're going to end up unhappy with them in the first place as well.
Yeah, if you don't have time for clients, if the person doesn't have time for clients, they shouldn't have clients.
Yeah.
And but as far as red flags, it's I think the last thing to add, at least my point here, the last thing to add is go with your gut. I can't tell you how many times just like you got a bad feeling about something, don't do it. I cannot tell you how many times that has saved my ass. Just if you got, there are a lot of bands they want that what if we just go out on this shitty tour? What if we work with this? They want that. They want it so bad. They will risk. It's almost like they're blind to thinking logical, and they'll put every bad feeling away. You trust your gut when it comes to like, hey, this guy comes off as greasy, he's like, sign right. Yeah. He's
and
like,
if somebody's talking shit, oh, sorry.
No, go right ahead.
If somebody's talking shit to you about the prior person they worked with, they're definitely going to talk shit about you to the next person they go to. Yeah. And, people go through publicists a lot. If anyone's talking shit on anybody, I don't care who they are, whether I'm friends with them, not friends with them or whatever, unless I know them to be terrible at their job, I'm not taking this client, because if they front load with talking shit, I don't need that in my life.
Yeah, it's one thing to say, this team and I didn't see eye to eye. That really pisses me off when a band approaches me, or I see a band, they have a team, but they're like they're shopping for another team while they have a team. Like don't email me or my colleagues when you have a man. Like don't do that. So those are some red flags.
And one thing I will say too is I tend to do something that I'm calling triage PR a lot. Somebody will have a publicist for like 3-4 months. They don't get them anything. They fire them. They come to me the week of release. Now, I've done that. I've taken clients like that, and I've gotten them more publicity in the first 3 days than they got in the last 3 months. But I don't like to do that. So if it's starting to feel bad, jump ship right away. Don't wait until the last second.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Anybody else have anything else that they want to ask for our participants that are here while we have you all?
I've got more to say. Actually, this is directed to Corey. You're in a death metal band. That's what you said, correct? Yeah. Okay, cool. So you may not believe it, but I do have a little bit of a background in death metal. So I have a little bit of advice for you. So with death metal, you're, I would say, kind of lucky to be plugged into that world, because it's a very insulated scene. People that listen to death metal love death metal, and they'll go to all the shows. They'll buy the t-shirts. They'll at least check out a band. It's not quite the same as like the big general hard rock genre, let's say, where there's just a million bands. Death metal, it really is a scene. the best way I can put it, kind of growing up, I was going to like punk and hardcore shows and putting on backyard shows and things like that. Everyone from all the local shows would still come to my backyard shows, because it's the scene. It was, for them, it's more about being there than, for being in the band or whatever the case. But with that scene, you can build on top of that. You don't necessarily need to reach influencers in the way that you think. It's not always about just emailing them and making a pitch for your band. You could be the hot shit local death metal band and get that kind of attention from the influencers to where they're going to want to cover you just because they see the hype. And, back when I was at Sumerian, we were at the time dealing primarily with death metal, bands like the Faceless, and really great bands would get our attention all the time because they were the big, tech death band in, whatever, Columbus or I don't know, whatever city. There's so many great bands out there that you could build a scene in your city around your band, or maybe there's an existing scene out there. But going back to the influencers, sorry, getting a little sidetracked. You don't need to make them a pitch. You can have your fans pitch them, because if they see that swell in attention you're getting, they're going to come to you. And going back to the Faceless, because I had the pleasure of seeing them grow from a local band playing, the rented out auditoriums at our high school to, headlining Summer Slaughter. They were like, they were the big death metal band. They were carrying that scene. Every kind of local photographer wanted to be at their show. And this was in the MySpace age, but you can still translate it to YouTube. Get your fans talking about you, get your neighborhood talking about you. Whatever, if you're selling out your hometown, these influencers will be coming to you and it'll be much better. Their coverage of your band will be much better because you're not going to pay them. We all know how the internet works. We know how influencer marketing works. It comes with a paycheck. But if they find you, they're not gonna ask for your money, or they shouldn't be asking for your money. They'll make that video, they'll make that post on their own, and it's a really cool feeling. And in death metal, it's a small enough scene to where you can actually reach those people. The influential people within death metal are attainable. You're not trying to reach some big program director at a radio station. You're trying to reach the dude that's probably at the same show as you.
Yeah.
Great point.
That's my advice. But I think death metal is a very cool scene. I don't think you have too much to worry about as long as your music is good. I think that's one of the few scenes where the music actually does speak for itself.
Yes.
It's got to be one of the, marketing wise, it's got to be one of the easier ones to target as well. I mean,
yep.
Everybody knows what goes along with death metal, and they really go towards it.
Oh yeah, that's why I love working in metal, because it is one of the few scenes, because I've worked in pop before and other genres, and metal is the one area where everybody wants you to succeed. Like the journalists love the music, the managers love the music. Like, it's such a pleasure to work in metal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's a great scene of people and a great culture of people there. So it's awesome.
And usually the technical death metal guys are just geeks anyway.
That is true.
Anybody else have anything else they want to throw in? This has been awesome, by the way. I want to say thanks, obviously, to all of the participants, the guests that have been on here this evening for us. I mean, this has been really, really cool, really fun. And I mean, hopefully people have been able to pick up some informative things and information along the way. And obviously, feel free, and I'll do an email or do something for all the people that did participate here that we don't know. I'll send an email out again with everybody's proper links, websites, contact information, things like that. So after the call wraps up, if anybody wants to further connect with each other, pitch each other anything, say hello, reach out or ask any other additional questions that you think of, obviously feel free to do so. I mean, the goal is to be helpful, and informative to musicians and bands of all kinds. So, I mean, again, thanks everybody. I mean, any last minute things before we wrap it up here then?
No, I thank you, Chris. It was a pleasure.
Awesome. And then to finalize, I will have a recording of this that we'll be able to reference for the people that are in our exclusive groups here that we have. So once that's uploaded, we'll get you guys access to a copy of it. That way you can go back through, take notes if you want, reference the meeting. And we do have those downloadable files as well that were in the chat there. If you don't have them, let me know and we'll make sure that you get those too. So, I mean, thank you all so much. I hope, again, it's been informative, and we will catch you on the flip side.
Thanks for having me. It was
Thanks, everybody.
Fun last minute Saturday night.
Everyone have a good cheers.